for me, what was really life-changing is following my curiosity and following my discomfort. Because my curiosity was what guided me to where I needed to go next. But that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, what am I curious about to do in my next job, to find my purpose? For me, it was like my curiosity was around personal development and going to a breathwork class. And then I had to also follow my discomfort. And for a long time, when I didn't have necessarily the discernment and I could really trust my intuition and I had self-trust and I had all of these things, I just went into the discomfort. Because a lot of breaking patterns is quite simple, but it's the discomfort that comes up when you're doing it. So learning to just be, for example, is going to feel boring for people. It's going to feel uncomfortable if you have a lot of rushing thoughts because you haven't learned how to sit with them yet. And so for me, the real tangible movement that I started being able to create in my life, which then had all of this momentum, was following my curiosity, even when it was something as small as a dance class, and also following my discomfort, because discomfort was usually what I needed to lean into.
The resource of love is like an unlimited resource, and you can give that love to anybody.
Escaping that capitalistic notion that you always need to have more or to be more.
People often look at the finished product of things and kind of just assume, oh, I need to get to there.
Why can't these animals that we share the same lineage with share the same similar experience?
Acceptance of the self. From the moment we're born to the moment we die, that's one of the main driving forces of existence.
Only constant in life is that things change. I knew that it was never going to be the same.
Inner Freedom Podcast, hosted by Olivia Chevallier. We started this recording already once, but I didn't press record, so here we go again. Sarah Jane, welcome to the Inner Freedom Podcast. It's really nice to have you here. And although I just told you all these things 5 minutes ago, I'm going to repeat it so the audience can hear it.
I get to hear it twice.
Yes, enjoy the words of affirmation. So we've been friends for a while now. It's been like almost a year and a half, I think, since we met. And yeah, I just got into the sauna at Wanderlust here in Canggu and just like, we just started having a laugh instantly. We got on so well. I don't even remember what we spoke about, but I remember that the first conversation we had, I was like, this person is completely on my level. Yeah. And you're one of the first women that I had met here in Bali that I felt like we just really resonated on the same kind of frequency in the way we think and how we carry ourselves, and it was really nice to just...
I don't know if I told you this, but I manifested you.
You manifested me, yeah?
I did, like literally like that week I had been in Bali and I was like, I really feel like I haven't called in the conscious friendships that I want yet. And I was really sitting and thinking about what do I want? What kind of conversations do I want to be having? What kind of energy do I want in my life? And like literally the next day, it was like we started talking in the sauna. I was like, thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe. I appreciate you. You ask and you shall receive. I feel like if your intentions are pure when it comes to what you ask for, you always get it. If your intentions are muddy, then it just never happens, which is good because that's the whole point of the learning, right? So that's cool. I feel like we must have manifested each other because I don't know. I started to, at that point in my life to really start looking for like quality like female friendships, and I was lucky back in the UK to have like a good handful of really close girlfriends who I felt were on the same level. But since traveling, like being in Bali and stuff, I just found it very easy to connect with men on like certain intellectual subjects and stuff. And it's not to say that women don't have any intellectual capacity, like women are super smart and empowered, but it was sometimes harder to find women who were a little bit more present in the work that they were doing on like their self-improvement and stuff, who like I could talk to about like really like technical shit and they would actually find it interesting. Not that they wouldn't understand it, but that they would find it interesting, and they would also have like a lot to like give back, you know? And when we started talking, we just started talking about so much stuff, and I just felt like it was as if we had known each other forever, which was really beautiful.
3 hours. The first time we spoke, like we were literally talking
we just didn't
for 3
stop.
hours. We did not stop.
And it was so nice. I felt like we really brought out this really nice feminine energy in each other and like a playfulness, and yeah, it was just really beautiful. So I was really grateful that I met you, and even though we haven't seen each other for 9 months, like we met up yesterday properly for the first time in 9 months, and it was like we hadn't seen each other for a couple of days. Yeah. So for me, that's like a hallmark of a real true friend, and I'm really grateful for that. So
me too.
Yeah, happy to have you here.
Welcome to my bedroom.
Yes, the bedroom in this beautiful villa in a place in Bali.
That's a giveaway. Here's also the geotag location.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just start how I always like to begin this podcast by just sharing with you like why you inspire me, and also sharing with the audience, because then it gives them an insight to why I wanted you to be here in the first place. So, you know, you've come from this super successful corporate life where you've really had everything that society's told you that you should want to be happy, to be fulfilled. you know, being like this really high rolling lawyer, just like smashing it at work, making loads of money, like having the lifestyle, the house, the friends, the partner, like everything that you should want to be happy, and the status and everything. And, you know, despite having everything, you realized inside yourself that you weren't really fulfilled in your life, and there were things that were missing, and you had the courage to just step back and walk away from all of that conditioning and all of that programming that says you need to live this life, your life this way to be happy. And you actually decided to pursue something that was more authentic to you, and, you know, dropped everything, came out here to Bali, started working on like your coaching business and helping hundreds or thousands of people with your words and your wisdom. And it's really beautiful to see how only in the very short time that I've met you, how much you've grown and how much your business has really excelled as a coach. And you're helping so many people and inspiring so many women and men alike to make change in their lives. And that change is not easy, you know, to walk away from everything that you've ever been told you should want, and to have the courage in yourself to realize, actually, this isn't right for me, and to carve your own path. It's super courageous, and that really inspires me so much to see how empowered you are as a woman and how you're living such an authentic life, and every day just constantly working on yourself, working on your business, you know, moving towards your goals, and also at the same time learning how to be and relax and step into that like really powerful feminine energy as well. And yeah, you just really inspire me so much. You're helping so many people with your words, and I hope to be able to grow my coaching business to the same level that you have. And I really look up to you as a role model in that area. So I'm really excited to have you here to share with my audience your beautiful wisdom, your experiences, and for us to just have a nice chat, as we always do, about all of these different subjects that I think they're really going to benefit from as well.
Thank you for that. And also because you really inspired me in a lot of ways. So it's like, excuse me, clearing my throat. It's just like really beautiful for me to actually hear. I was about to say, I don't think I've heard you say that to me before, apart from like 5 minutes ago when we weren't recording, but it's like, it's just really nice to receive that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. And, you know, it's just beautiful to have a friend like you that I feel like we mirror a lot to each other, what we're trying to achieve with ourselves and with our businesses. And I feel like we really inspire each other, but also understand each other deeply, which is a really nice dynamic to have with a friend who is going through like similar things in life, maybe at different stages and different elements, but we're going through very similar paths in terms of our personal growth and our businesses and everything. And I feel like we can kind of help each other fill out the gaps that we are missing, kind of, and inspire each other in different areas, which is really beautiful.
To feel seen and also inspired by people that you connect with is something that I've more recently been sitting with, the absence of it potentially in my life, because I think as you continue to do conscious work and you call in different people or you connect with different people, it's almost like what's the expression, like new level, new devil or something. And so it's like, as you're continuing to evolve, there's usually with your connections, there's a gap between you know, potentially who you were and what you were connecting on. And so for a friend to continuously see you in the authentic version of you and the expression of you is one thing, but to also have a friend that simultaneously inspires you because of where they're at and where they're growing, and to be continuing to grow in that direction together while seeing each other and inspiring each other, I think is just a really special thing.
Yeah,
and it's not something that I have with a lot of people.
Yeah, me too. It's something that I think is really important to have for a friend, but also for like a partner as well, right? Like it's so important to have, like, in any kind of relationship that you have with another person, when you're relating with them, I think it's really important that we choose people that, as much as we can, have that growth element kind of embedded into their values, because if that's something that's really important to us, it should be something that I think we should be kind of evaluating how deeply we connect with people on as well, because you want to be surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to be your best self and to grow past your limiting beliefs and constantly be challenging your comfort zone. And if they do that, naturally you just pick up that motion as well in yourself. So it's really special to have a friend like you, and it's been nice to reconnect after so long, after the last couple of days. I'm very glad I decided to come to Bali for my visa run.
Me too. Yeah. When I saw you put up an Instagram story, you're coming back to Bali, I was like, yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thanks for the message. It was really nice. So I just want the audience to get to know you a little bit, because I'm sure many of your audience will probably watch this and they already know your story, but there's also going to be people who've never come across you before. So I would love if you could just share with them and with me a bit about your origin story. Like, how did you get to this place now where you're working as a coach, you're doing somatic work, you're doing mindset work, you're running programs and courses and one-on-one coaching and just completely blowing up. And it's amazing to see that. Like, and you're also really fulfilled in your life. You're taking time to have freedom to do what you want and choose your day to spontaneously come and do a podcast with me on a random Monday afternoon. And yeah, how did you get to this place?
It's interesting when you say people might be familiar with my story, because I feel like I'm actually re-sharing my story, because there was parts of my story that I would always admit.
That's interesting.
And the more that I've done somatic work and breath work and really moved through things that I don't think I was in a place previously to share, the more that my story has evolved. So I'm also trying to process and work out, the kind of the way that feels the most authentic in expression to tell my story. But I think in short, like, I was very much brought up in a common Western childhood household of really pushing to excellence. I had loving and supportive parents, but they didn't realize how much pressure that they would put on me to achieve at a really high level. And I had a natural aptitude for a lot of things, which meant that I did quite well in a lot of things that I did. And that meant that, I ended up studying law at uni, and I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I got in on a scholarship and I graduated first in my class.
Wow.
So it was going down this really intense pathway or career choice that I thought that I wanted. I was told to want it by my parents, by society, by myself. I genuinely thought it's what I wanted. And, so I was at uni for 6 years. I went down a corporate law pathway, which is a 9-month recruitment process. And you have thousands of applications per law firm. And I had the pick of like wherever I wanted to go.
Wow.
So it was just this constant reinforced programming of,
You're doing the right thing.
you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And this is what your life should look like. And this is what success is.
Yeah.
And during all of that, though, and something that I suffered with in a lot of silence, was I was really struggling with PTSD. I had a physically abusive ex-partner and emotionally, verbally abusive, that I had a lot of trauma around. Wow. And it resulted in a lot of physical injuries for me. Like I broke my back, I had multiple slip discs. And so through all of this career pathway, I was also dealing with emotional issues and physical pain that I was suppressing. And over time, the more that I kind of got down in this corporate law pathway, the more I was disconnecting from myself without realizing. Yeah. I was just suppressing. And, I was doing incredibly well in law. I was really successful, the promotions, the pay rises. I had a beautiful partner. Like, we were about to have a kid together.
Wow, yeah.
We were about to buy a house together. I had like the 6-figure like stock investment portfolio. Like I had everything. By my 30th birthday, I just remember being like, I have everything that I have ever wanted. I don't have any career goals left. I have the partner, I have everything, and it was the most unhappy I've ever been in my whole life.
Wow.
I was depressed, like diagnosably depressed. I was on meds for my back. It was just one of my dark nights of the soul, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of, I just got to this point and I'm like, well, if you have everything that you want and you're not happy, you don't have the right things.
Yeah.
And that's when my body pretty much gave out. So, corporate law, it's a 60 to 80 hour weeks.
Super intense.
Yeah. It's
super stressful.
So stressful, emotionally unregulated people. You're working 16-hour days, being literally verbally abused, most days. You're sacrificing your life, your energy, everything, and for what?
Yeah, it's nothing like Suits.
Whenever someone said that to me, I'm like, do you know what basically all Suits is representative of is the long hours and the drinking culture.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And they capture that really well.
Yeah, they do capture that well, except we all look a lot less polished.
Yeah, and it's a lot less cool. It's not like every court case is like this super cool, like slam dunk, like
it's like
suave presentation. It's like long, drawn out again and again and again, going back to court and just a lot of red tape, right?
Yeah. And so at some point my body gave out because it couldn't work that much. It couldn't be pushed that much. It just couldn't do what I was asking it to do, and I ignored all of the warning signs until I had severe burnout. Like I couldn't get off the couch. And so I took time off because I literally got to a point I couldn't work. And then Australia went into lockdown during the pandemic and I couldn't leave. I couldn't travel. I couldn't do all of the things that I'd planned to with my time off. And it was the biggest blessing in disguise because I had no choice but to sit with myself. Legally, we're allowed to leave the house.
Yeah, for the first time, you have no distractions whatsoever.
No distractions. And you're not allowed to do any of the things that you would normally go into your default patterns of distraction with. And in sitting there, that's where I also went, oh my goodness, this relationship also isn't for me. Beautiful guy, incredible guy, just not the guy for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that deep down, but I'd been avoiding it. And
Yep.
so then I
Feel
went
you.
through the breakup as well. So we left the job, we left the man.
Wow.
We're in a pandemic. And then it just kind of got to this point once we were kind of coming out of the pandemic and I was like, I just need a circuit breaker. Like my life has just been this like real intensity and I've been deeply, deeply unhappy for a long time. I just need some fresh air from this. And so I came out to Bali and that 5-week trip turned into like 4 months and I went really deep into my personal development journey here. You know, I was just, it's basically like I went into a cocoon almost. Like I wasn't working at the time. I completely stopped dating. I was just in the thick of it. And through a combination of, you know, top down and bottom up, so mindset and somatic work, I really actually started dealing with PTSD and dealing with a lot of the trauma that I was holding on to emotionally, physically. And kind of through navigating that, I realized how much I love this space and how much, you know, in about, you know, the first probably 8 months to a year that I was in Bali, like I just exponentially changed. You know, a lot of the way that the Western world treats PTSD is through exposure therapy, which re-traumatize me, meds, which don't do anything, and, you know, kind of cognitive processing almost, where it's like if you're triggered, deal with this, which doesn't recognize what happens in the body.
Nope.
And for me, you know, back then when I was deeply triggered, the Broca's region of the brain goes offline, which is responsible for speech. So it's not like I actually could do the things that I was being told to do.
No, yeah, you're just trying to intellectualize away everything instead of really dealing with the root cause of it in a way that is going to last, right?
Yeah.
Like we can intellectualize our emotions for a split second and be like, okay, cool, I understand. You know, when you're having like an anxious moment where you're overthinking and all these patterns of like your limiting self-beliefs are coming up and triggering you to start reinforcing those beliefs because of a situation, you start making assumptions, your mind starts running about like all these different things that could be going wrong. And in that moment, you can say to yourself, oh, I know I'm overthinking. I know this is just my trauma talking, but it doesn't stop you from continuing to overthink.
No.
It actually just makes you feel worse because you know that you're doing something that's counterproductive, but you don't have any tools to really stop yourself. So then you end up not only overthinking and going into spirals of limiting self-beliefs, but you also start judging yourself on top of that.
Self-criticism.
And then it reinforces the narrative that you're not good enough fundamentally, and it doesn't help solve the problem.
No.
So what happened next?
I realized so as I was doing that, I was really kind of co-creating a life that actually made me happy out here, you know, being in nature, being around inspiring people, really prioritizing my health for once. And in that time, I realized, I was like, there's absolutely no way I can go back to working for someone else.
I feel that.
I was like, I can't, because, you know, for me, who's my highest value I know now is freedom. It's never going to work for me working for someone else.
No.
And I was fortunate at that time on the side, I'd been doing Instagram in a completely kind of different space, but I was making money through paid sponsorships. And that for me was a real expander in almost, I don't want to say passive income, but because you're still doing work for it, but it was getting paid highly for not necessarily hours worked.
Yes.
And I kind of went, I'm so deeply passionate about personal development and personal growth and what it's done for me. And I knew that I wanted to potentially get into courses because I wanted scalability, I wanted impact, I wanted passive income.
Help so many more people that way.
And so I was like, I'm gonna do that. And I was relentless in knowing, one, that I had to keep processing the trauma that I had and the work that I needed to do on myself, creating a life for myself that deeply made me fulfilled, but also knowing I was never going back to being a lawyer.
That's a good thing to be 100% certain of, right?
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to find a way to make it work. And so that's when I started the first course, which, fun fact, Liv actually helped me with.
Yeah,
Liv actually did.
A little bit. I did the workbooks.
You did. Long story short, like I had somebody else that was working on my workbooks that didn't work, pun not intended. And so at the last minute, I'm freaking out before a launch. I'm like, I don't know how to make this work. And so Liv actually helped with the graphic design for the workbooks.
Yeah, God.
And then it's just been such an evolution since then of I've continued to get new qualifications, I've continued to introduce more somatic work into my business with breath work, with movement and with nervous system regulation, and just expanded offerings and my one-on-one programs and courses. And it's just really, I guess, when I reflect now on like the last 2 years, I'm like, wow, it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's been a lot. It's really good that you've not only just walked away, but you've found a path that actually suits you better. Because I think a lot of what happens when people walk away from, having like a quarter life or midlife crisis, when you're saying like, oh shit, this isn't the right thing for me, people just go into self-destruct mode. And they I don't know, they might go traveling, but then they just go and get pissed every night, just like drinking, sleeping around, like not really being very conscious about their decision making. And they just think, oh, my life is fucked, what do I do now? I'm just going to self-destruct, because it's easier than dealing with the cognitive dissonance that I have committed my whole life to something that's actually not right for me. But what's nice is, instead of doing that, you decided to figure out what is right for you and really reflect on what is the problem, how can I resolve this, how can I start moving forward, and how can I grow, instead of just burying my head in the sand and pretending that this is never something that I can change. I think one of the most important things that I'm sure both of us probably try to live by, but also share with our clients and with the people who follow us, is like, you are the creative force in your life. It's completely up to you if you want to make your life into, a victimization, and everything is always blame, blame, blame. Everything else is like my parents' fault, my boyfriend's fault, and my society's fault, and my life is just fucked because of everyone else. Or can you say, okay, well, this is the circumstances that I'm born with. This is the world that I'm born into. These are the challenges that I'm presented with. But I have and think about all these things so I can be more in alignment with authenticity. And in doing that, you are now creating, instead of waiting around for life to do everything for you. You recognize that actually, despite all the circumstances, you are the creative force that ultimately makes the choices of if you're going to be ignorant or if you're going to be knowledgeable, if you're going to take action or if you're going to be passive, if you're going to wait or you're going to create. It's like, it's up to you.
I love that. Are you going to wait or create?
Yeah.
Do you know, a question that I love to ask my clients, and for anyone listening, is where am I being a victim in my life? Because what can often happen is when we think about what's going on in our life, we automatically externalize, like, my boss is doing this is happening at home, my partner's doing this. But when we shift to that question, it immediately forces us into accountability.
Exactly.
So where are you actually being a victim in your life? And then, don't wait, create.
Yeah, just go and make something for yourself. And you can take action today, even if it's something as small as like watching some YouTube videos or doing a course or starting to journal or getting into meditation. Like, there's so many small things that you can start doing just to start shifting into like a bit more of an aware state to begin with, so you can actually start making choices about what's right for you. And I think it's particularly for us women in the modern society, which is something we were speaking about a lot yesterday. There's a lot of pressure for us to kind of run away from our intuition and actually not trust our intuition, but to lean more into a place of just like pure logical reasoning about who we should be and where we should be. And we live in such a weird, inverted time in reality where, men are growing up with an absent male role model, no father in the house most of the time because he's always working or whatever. And, even though mum also works a lot now too, like the mother figure is still able to work, I do think there's still more of a dynamic from maybe our generation and the generation before, where like the parents are being raised in a household, at least, where there was no father around. So like men are lacking this male role model. And so because of that, the mum has to step up into the kind of fathering and mothering role sometimes, which means that the men are learning wounded feminine traits as their kind of role model is their mum most of the time. And women, I feel we're kind of being shown by society that in order to be successful, to be accepted, in order for our lives to look good enough, we need to kind of pursue this like business route, this like achievement heavy route, which is inherently more of a masculine energy in our world. It doesn't have to be that way, but it is. And you really need to be structured and organized, and you need to know where you are every 5 years. You need to know what you're going to be doing. You need to plan at 16 years old. You need to know exactly what degree you're going to do and plan the rest of your life, which is really automatically taking women out of the feminine and putting them into the masculine. So we're growing up in a world where a lot of women are very in their wounded masculine, and a lot of men are in their wounded feminine, and there's this weird like reverse polarity happening. And you know, I can just speak as being a woman, right? It's very challenging when you're growing up in a world where you're kind of celebrated the more you lean into that masculine energy, and you feel like you're kind of losing at life if you're not allowing yourself space to be intuitive, to relax, to enjoy the flowing and the creating and the receiving, and to not always step into like leading, but to just actually allow life to present you with opportunities that, you know, you can receive and you can understand intuitively, is this right for me or not? And I think we've both gone through that path in our lives where we were doing really well with that very structured societal
I can do it
program.
all myself. I don't need anyone's help.
Been there. And
Go,
especially like
go,
achievements
go.
as well, like, you know, going to university, getting the job, like, I think we're both pretty fortunate. We're in like similar positions with like uni and school, that we just pick things up really easily, and like we excelled at that academic route, and it makes it very inviting to get sucked into that corporate, like achievement orientated lifestyle. And you know, I definitely certainly noticed myself at one point that I was living so much more in my masculine, and I was never really allowing space to be in my feminine. Like there was actually a point I realized that I was in my masculine. I was kind of proud of it. Because I was like,
interesting.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of it. I was like, oh, cool. That means that I'm really like, I'm achieving well in my life.
Do you want to maybe explain? Because I know a lot more people are talking about masculine and feminine energy, but do you want to actually explain what that means? Like, especially like I know for a lot of, you know, my clients or people listening to this might not actually necessarily know what it is. Yeah. And also I think sometimes there's a bit of discourse around what it actually means, because especially with like growing feminism and gender equality and stuff, there can be, and I personally went through this as well, some resistance around what that actually means. And, you know, if I say that I want to be my feminine and not my masculine, you know, does that make me an anti-feminist? So what do we actually mean by that? And because I think it's also important to recognize that everyone has both energies, right? Whether you want to call them yin and yang, or you want to call it something else, what those energies actually are to you.
So this is only, of course, things that I've experienced and practiced in my life, but also rigorously researching since I started to learn about these things. Because for me, it was also like a very obscure, like alien topic when somebody told me for the first time that I was like very masculine, and I was like, I don't look masculine.
You're like,
I don't look masculine.
So I've got my blonde hair and I've got like,
what? and for me, it was such an alien thing. Like, what does it even mean to be a very masculine woman energetically? And yeah, it's like you said, every single one of us has masculine and feminine energy. Being masculine or feminine isn't really about being a man or being a woman, although I would say on average the tendency would be that the average woman would tend towards her feminine at least like 60% of the time, and masculine energy 40% of the time, and vice versa for men, tending towards their masculine more of the time and the feminine a bit less. But we all have the qualities of masculine and feminine, and in different situations we need to be able to step into masculine and step into feminine and embody those things. They're both important. So what is the feminine to start off with, right? The feminine is the kind of receiving energy, the being, it's the chaos, right? Masculine is the order and feminine is the chaos. So it's that kind of allowing yourself to flow through the motions intuitively in the moment. And I think that's very much what the feminine is about. It's like being in this moment and really being grounded in the present. And
I don't know if you've heard the analogy where it's like the woman, or the feminine, sorry, I should say, is the ocean, and the masculine is the ship that's trying to like steer it.
Yeah, that's a nice analogy. I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's like that Shakti and Shiva, like in Hinduism, like, you know, Shakti's creating all this chaos and Shiva's trying to create like a container to actually structure all the chaos into something that becomes a physical reality.
Yeah. Or even like as a glass of water, like the masculine is the container that holds all of the feminine inside.
Yes.
The just streams of water. Yeah.
And in a lot of spiritual practices like Hinduism, Buddhism, Shinto and stuff, they believe that the soul is the feminine, and then the body is like it's the other way around, that the soul is the masculine and the body is the feminine. No. It's definitely the other way around. The soul is the feminine because it's just this pure like created chaos. It's like a formless, flowing, omnipresent kind of energy, and then the masculine is like containing it and creating it into a form, a structure where it can actually move through the world, right? Which is super interesting. But anyway, so if the feminine is chaos and the masculine is order, then the feminine is really about flowing, creativity, moment to moment intuition. It's like right now in this moment, boom, I can feel that this feels right. I can feel that this feels wrong. And I'm responding intuitively right now to what I'm feeling inside my body with, you know, the inputs that I'm getting, whether that's like a kind of feeling, or if it's like you feel pulled towards something and you don't even think about it, you just pick up an instrument, you start playing, or you see someone that you like and you don't even think about it, like you both just gravitate towards each other and you start speaking to each other. It's that kind of intuitive energy where you're not really thinking as much and you're more feeling. It's the emotional body, the feeling, that kind of receptive thing. And nurturing as well, it's also very important, that mothering, nurturing, caring kind of energy, the empathy and the compassion that comes with that emotional awareness. And then the masculine is more like the structure, the order. It's the thing that takes all of that flowy chaos, like everything's amazing, and then starts to direct it into, okay, cool, we've got all this creativity and all these potentials and all this, you know, limitless creativity, but now how can we structure that into like a step-by-step thing? And I think the masculine is much more about safety and security, like providing a space to create safety for this chaos and actually turn it into something that can be constructive. It's the giving energy. It's not the receiving energy. So for the masculine, it's important to lead, to give, to initiate, to be assertive. And it's something that both men and women will do at different points in their life. I think most women who are in the business realm, you do need to tap into your masculine energy when it comes to business, because, you know, marketing, cold messaging, like doing all of this kind of outreach and stuff, it's inherently a masculine thing, because you're going out and you're looking for something, you're hunting it out and you're then trying to get it. But there's also like a feminine quality to business, which is the inviting, the seduction, you know, the marketing is also part feminine, I think, because we're
push and pull marketing, right? Which one's like attracting people in and which one's pushing people away.
And the feminine's very much about like invitation, seduction, like, you know, a lot of the time the woman will choose the man before the man's even come over. She's already decided, I like this guy. And then she'll create a situation for him to be invited to come and speak to her most of the time. And the guy thinks, oh, I chose her, I'm going to go get her now. But the truth is, she's been checking him out since he walked in. Before he even saw her, she saw him, and she's already decided, okay, well, I'm going to entice this guy to come over and talk to me and make him feel safe that he can come and do that. So there's like always this balancing interplay between the masculine and feminine, and I think they both have equal beautiful power, and they can be shown in such a beautiful way. Now, when they're wounded, it manifests in a very different way. So the wounded masculine is like, you know, trying excessively to have control, you know, not having any trust for anything, micromanaging, and just constantly just trying to grab at how you can have so much structure that there's no room for anything to go wrong whatsoever. You know, a fly trying to get up all in.
Welcome to Bali.
Welcome to Bali. And then the wounded feminine is like not being decisive. It's like having such a lack of, the wounded aspects of both is having such a lack of the opposite side that it becomes the extreme of that particular side, which is why it's dangerous for anyone to be completely in their feminine or completely in their masculine. When someone's so like wounded in their feminine, they can't make decisions, they don't have any trust in themselves, like their intuition is screaming at them so often, but they don't have any structure of how to make a decision. So they're just like gut feeling, like, how do I choose what the right thing to do is here? And they're just like getting knots because they have no idea what the right thing to do is. Almost like a helplessness as well, I think, when you're in that wounded feminine, where you feel so unable to do anything for yourself that you're just always looking to the external, like, please save me, like somebody do everything for me, please. So yeah, I think, do you feel that kind of covers them pretty well?
No, I think that was a great explanation.
Yeah? Okay, nice. So what have been your experiences as a woman growing up in that very corporate, like achievement orientated life with this kind of dynamic of masculine and feminine within you?
I think the biggest lesson or eye-opener that I really realized was that I effectively created a pattern around thinking I wanted to be in my masculine. Like the hyper independence.
Yes.
Right? Like, I can do it all myself. I don't need like anyone's help. And it's not even necessarily because I thought help made me weak. It was because I was clinging to control that made me feel good. And also all of the things that we're conditioned to believe around success. And if that's what I was kind of benchmarking my life against, it felt good for me to be in my masculine. And I'm putting inverted commas in for anyone that can't see the visual. and that took a lot of like reprogramming. But what I realized is how do I actually feel when I'm not like that?
Yes.
And one thing I really noticed helped me shift was actually in a romantic setting, because I would also develop this kind of rhetoric around like chasing men.
Yeah.
Or, you know, if I was impatient, wanting to like pursue the man, you know, and I even kind of developed confidence around it, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I knew that I could get someone.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then I felt good being in this masculine, like, go after it, get
Yeah,
what
the
you want.
assertiveness.
The assertiveness, chase what you
Yeah.
want, get what you want. But that is exhausting.
And you always end up with guys who are in their feminine as well.
Yes, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And for me, like a real shift is learning how to soften. And I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, right? Because like a lot of the education that I have around this kind of came second to,
Yeah.
my experience first. But it was, how do I actually feel when I'm in my feminine, right? So how do I feel when I'm actually being pursued by a guy? How do I feel when a guy, he's actually one of my really good friends now, but I was going on a few dates with this guy, and I'm never gonna, like, I'll never forget this because it's like just such a beautiful example of like healthy masculine energy, and it's just stayed with me in knowing how I like to be like courted in a way, right?
Yes.
And it's the first date that we ever went on. He said to me, he said, what do you like to eat? And I said, I actually really like steak. And so he knew where I lived.
Nice.
He found a restaurant near me that had good steak. He sent me their menu, and he sent me a picture of the steak on their Instagram.
Wow,
And
nice.
said, you know, does this look okay for you?
Nice.
And I said yes. And then he said, okay, it's booked for 5 o'clock, because we both are nanas that eat early. Booked for 5 o'clock. I'll pick you up 15 minutes beforehand.
Nice.
And that for me was so foreign.
And it's so refreshing as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'd had that with anyone, you know, because it was all like, I would almost chase.
You wouldn't
I would
even
like,
allow them the space to allow you
Yeah.
to. Sorry, you wouldn't allow them the space to be in their masculine, because you'd be like so quick to get in there as the lead, right?
Yeah. And if I was interested in someone and we'd been talking, there was really good conversation, I was very much in my right. I'll make this happen. Let's go on a date.
Yeah, I was exactly the same as you.
Yeah. And so it
Yeah.
forces them into this receivership.
Yeah.
And so for me, like a lot of this reprogramming is, how do I actually feel when I'm in my feminine, when somebody else is initiating, when they're leading? Because what I found is I actually get exhausted by decision making. I don't actually want to be chasing someone.
No.
Whether it's like in business, whether it's in a romantic setting, whether it's in a like.
You'd rather invite people to
Yes.
come to you, right?
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
learning and, you know, removing the labels for me helped in the beginning around like what's masculine, what's feminine, and actually just going with what feels good.
That's a nice advice.
Yeah, because, you know, especially like in a Western culture, I did struggle with like, you know, just the terminology.
Yeah,
right?
me too.
And
Me too. It triggered me so much.
Yes,
When I
yeah.
first spoke about it, I got so triggered. I was like, I'm not masculine.
Yeah.
I'm a woman. I'm clearly a woman. Like, don't tell me that I'm masculine. And it's like you get confused about like being a man or being a woman, and being in your
Yes.
masculine or being in your feminine.
Yeah, it's just
very
energy.
different. It's
and
just energy.
everything's
Yeah.
energy, right? And
Yes.
I think if you accept that, you know, you can spend time with people and they drain you, or you spend time with people and they expand you, we can accept that like everything is energy. And so if you then just kind of start seeing what we're talking about as energy rather than labels and constructs,
Yes.
and following what feels good, that for me is where things really started shifting. And where I could then, and once I could then accept that, I could then deepen into like, what does make me feel good, you know, as someone that is constantly, because business does require you still to be quite in your masculine,
Yeah, it
right?
does.
Even if it's
There's a
just
structure
the
and-
systems, the structure, consistency,
Yes.
like all of that stuff. And so for me, it's like, where can you make sure that that is being balanced
Yeah,
out?
how can you make space in other places in your life? And you're really good at that. I think we're both pretty good at that now. When, you know, you've been working hard, grinding, but then you just have a day where you just feel intuitively that your body's exhausted, you just need time to relax, hang out with your girlfriends, like get a massage, sit by the pool, read, whatever it might be, just to like be and not feel the urge to constantly be progressing, but to actually recognize that sometimes taking that space allows you more time to progress and more productivity when you do come back, as opposed to just being like, no, I must work every day. I must keep to this structure to a religious T, because you do just burn out at some point.
Yes.
And
But you and I think we do that really well now,
But we
because
didn't
we have infinite levels of self-trust though.
yes.
So I also know that no, I can take a day off. I could take a week off. I could take a month off. And at the end of the day, if I want to make something happen, I will make it happen.
Yeah.
And I know that without a doubt. Whereas when I didn't have that self-trust, when I didn't have that self-confidence.
You need the structure, right?
Yeah, I needed the structure. And also I had guilt around letting go and just being, because it was almost like I'd had so many examples of, you know, whether it was a gym routine or it was something else where I'd go, and the second that I kind of took my foot off the gas,
You would stop completely.
you'd stop completely.
And then you'd kick yourself for it.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so it was, I really struggled to just be in the infancy stages of developing this self-trust, because I was
You were
really,
taking liberties with it too much.
yes. And I didn't have self-trust that it would just get done.
Yeah.
And so I think that can become a difficult cycle for people where they have all of the internal self-criticism, self-shame, need to be doing, but then if they also don't have really strong self-trust, it can be really hard for people to just let go and to just be.
Yeah, big time. And I think that's why it could be a nice stepping stone for many people to have like the middle ground of like having structured time where you will take a break. So you kind of get that middle ground where like you're feeling intuitively, but like maybe, yeah, one day you're feeling intuitively that, okay, I just need to relax. But then you can just say, okay, well, I'm going to take today off, but I'm going to maybe just briefly make a little structure of tomorrow. What am I going to do that is going to kind of rebalance the time that I'm going to take off today, for example? Like I was going to work yesterday, for example, and I had such a nice time going to a static dance, having some food, coming to see you, and we were just chatting for ages, and I didn't feel the desire at all to work yesterday in the end. And I just said to myself in my mind, okay, well, I'm going to go to bed early, enjoy the day, not worry about the fact that I'm not working today. And then tomorrow I will sit down and do work and crack on with everything that I needed to do yesterday. And it was really good today. I got a lot done in a very short amount of time because of having had that break. So maybe like a good middle ground is just having some kind of planned time that you will have structure, and some time where you just allow yourself the breathing room, you know, which...
I think for a lot of people, the trouble that they face is that when you do work for someone else and you work Monday to Friday,
You can't do that. Yeah.
the Saturday and Sunday becomes people's time off. And what people, I think, fall into the trap of doing is they then plan most of their weekend.
Yeah.
So they're like constantly in that go,
don't
like
have
the
any break.
masculine, and they don't have any kind of break off it. And in order to kind of fit everything in, they just do that. So I just a really easy starting point that I give a lot of my clients is one day of the weekend, have no plans. And in the moment, tap into how you feel and see what you want to do. And don't plan for the whole day, because that's what people, they'll wake up and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Actually, like tap in any given moment in that entire day. What do I feel like right now? You know, maybe it's a slow morning in bed that feels unproductive.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going in a massage. Maybe it is actually the gym. Maybe it is cleaning the house, but actually really tapping into what do I want in this moment, because I think when we are spontaneous, one of the reasons I love spontaneity is because it immediately forces you to connect to the present moment with what you want and need.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, when they are in that, 9 to 5, or they're working for somebody else, they then plan all of the time that they have off on the weekend, which is then just perpetuating the cycle of being in the masculine, always doing, having trouble being, and that's where they're actually probably going to feel really
And it
good.
sucks when you get to like Monday morning after you've had the whole week working your ass off, maybe like 40 to 60 hours, depending on the job that you're doing, maybe even more. Like some people, they work even more than that, which is in itself a whole other conversation. And then you have the weekend, you're like, okay, well, I've dedicated my whole life for the week to making my boss's dream come true. So now I'm going to enjoy myself. Haven't had time in the evenings in the week to do anything. So I'm going to gym. I'm going to go for brunch. I'm going to go on a date. I'm going to see these friends. I'm going to go out.
I'm going to drink.
I'm going to drink. I'm going to do all of this shit. And then like you get to Monday morning and you feel like you haven't even had a break. Even though you've been doing stuff yourself, but you haven't even had a break and you feel exhausted. Like I would hate those days when I get to Monday and I round my weekend with so much activity because I just didn't have any time in the week.
You're squeezing your life literally into 2 days.
Yeah, and then you're just like, oh my God, it's Monday already. Like how's it gone by so fast? And it's like you've been so unpresent throughout your whole weekend that it's just gone by like a flash. Because it's funny because people always say time goes fast when you're having fun. But personally, I actually really disagree with that. Like over the last year and a half that I've been traveling, since leaving the UK, leaving that hustle culture and coming to a bit more of a slow-paced life, working on my businesses and everything, but also having a lot of time to heal, to socialize, to go to the gym, to explore new places. Like since being in that kind of environment, I've actually felt like the last year and a half has felt really long. because I've been so present 90% of the time. I've not been like always daydreaming about the future or clock watching like, oh shit, it's Friday. Yes, can't wait for the weekend. Like I don't have any of that kind of mindset anymore. Like now it's like, oh, it's Friday. It's just another day. Oh, it's Saturday. It's just another day. It's like you have the freedom of time to choose what you want to do each and every day. And because of that, you're constantly choosing things that you really want to do most of the time. And even the work you're doing, you've chosen that you want to do that more than working for someone else. And you have a certain level of like ownership over it. And I found like the last even 9 months since I've been living in Thailand, it's gone by like so slowly in a really great way. I haven't felt like it's gone by like a flash because you're so present. You're soaking up every single moment. You're just like enjoying every little flavor and texture and conversation and food and everything, that you get to the end of a year and you're like, wow, it's been a year? Like, what the hell? It feels like a lifetime.
I love that you actually said even what you were eating, because one of the practices that I like to give my clients, and I think it's really useful to kind of reinforce the point that you just made, is a mindful eating practice. Because when you sit with a meal and no other distractions, there's no phone, there's no Netflix, there's nothing else, and you just sit and you consciously consume that meal, it tastes better, time feels slower, you're just actually just present, and you enjoy it a lot more.
And
versus,
you digest better as well.
You also digest better.
Yeah.
Versus most people, they have a meal while they're watching Netflix or something, and before they scoff it down.
Yeah, they don't
and
realise.
before they know it, it's like basically finished.
Yeah.
And it's time hasn't necessarily changed, except maybe if you've scoffed it down, literally inhaled it. Yeah, but it's just that you're actually not present for one.
Yes.
And so I agree with you. It's not necessarily time flies when you're having fun. It's time actually feels slower when you're present. Time flies when you're like lost in your head.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're lost in your head, like as something I've been saying a lot recently to my clients, and I think also on my videos, but I feel like the brain and the thinking mind is really like a simulation machine.
All right,
It's taking data points. It's taking data points from past experiences, and then it's trying to predict a future outcome based on those data points to either prevent or recreate circumstances of the past. So whenever you're thinking in the future, like, okay, this is all the data points I've seen, this is how you get to success, this is how I've done things before that have worked, these are things that didn't work, this is how I got hurt, you're thinking, okay, now what's the future I want? How can I make that happen? And every second of the day, you're practicing this, like, being not present and thinking about the future and mitigating or planning for how you can get the results you want. So you're kind of just in a flash, just completely omitting your actual experience, and you're just living in a simulation. And you get to the future where you've got the car, you've got the money, you've got the boyfriend, you've got the house, you've got everything, and you're like, where the hell did the time go? And it's because you've been so busy thinking in the future that every step of the way getting to that point, you haven't actually been present for any of it. You've just been on autopilot. Your body's been on autopilot whilst your brain has been simulating how am I going to get there. And this is how you get to the end of your life in like your 70s or your 80s, and you look back and you're like, shit, I actually haven't lived my life at all.
Not to mention, if you're in a place where you're feeling deeply unfulfilled and you resonate with some of the things that we've been talking about, your brain doesn't have examples to give you of the opposite of what you're actually trying to create. And so a lot of the time you just have fear-based thoughts, which is creating fear-based outcomes. And so you're actually lost in thought on this like simulation. I kind of love this example. I might steal it in the future.
Yeah, please take it.
But you're actually lost in the worst case scenario. And what, all of the change that I've been through is life can actually turn out better than you possibly could imagine. I created a vision board like maybe 3 years ago. My life is better than the vision board. And when I made that vision board, I was like, this is a pipe dream. But what happens is you get lost in these thoughts. You miss all of the present that we've spoken about, but you're also keeping yourself trapped to an outcome that is a negative one for most people.
Yes.
And the fear that kicks in stops you actually taking action, and it actually stops you going after something that could be better.
Yeah, completely.
So I think like it might be really helpful to have a discussion of if that's what people are resonating with, what should they do instead?
Yes, I agree, because it's important to recognize that the program that you're running, it's only based on things that you have experienced so far, or things that you've been told or that you've seen. And there's so many possibilities out there for you that you can't even imagine. And the only way that you can open access to those things is by stepping into that being present, that feminine quote unquote energy of flowing, being intuitive, allowing things to unfold without needing to control anything, but just seeing like, okay, what can I invite to my life? with my actions, with my mindset, with the way I treat people, with the way I listen to my body and my intuitive impulses moment to moment and my authenticity. And when we can start tuning into those things and asking ourselves the right questions, we surprise ourselves with how rich our lives can become. Because both of us were stuck in the matrix, quote unquote, the matrix. Like,
Red pill, blue pill.
Yeah, we were both stuck in that. And I think most people who resonate with this kind of content, they're either still stuck in it or they're in the transition period where they're walking away from it. Perhaps they're completely out of the matrix now, in which case, congratulations, you've done a great job. But like, I think most people that resonate with this stuff, they themselves are also going through that path of breaking down the barriers of their programmed mind and how they're starting to realize that they're really creating a box for themselves to live in. And that box is such a small amount of possibility compared to the whole outside world. And if you can just like walk through that box, break the walls down and see all the possibilities outside of that, you're going to be amazed by how much you can do with your life. And it's not about doing, achieving, making money, like all that stuff. It's about whatever for you is the right formula to feel happy in your life. It's like opening the aperture a little bit so you can actually see what else is out there instead of, you know, living by the constraints of what you've been given. Because that's normally what we do. We get given constraints. This is your political party. This is your job line. This is your education. This is your country. This is everything about your life that you can live within this box. So good luck playing inside this box. But the box is imaginary.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. It's completely manufactured by the thinking mind. And that's where we get into not only doing mindset work, but doing something that both of us are very passionate about right now, which is somatic work.
Really tangibly what people can actually do if they're really resonating with the what we were talking about. For me, what was really life-changing is following my curiosity and following my discomfort. Because my curiosity was what guided me to where I needed to go next. But that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, what am I curious about to do in my next job, to find my purpose? For me, it was like my curiosity was around personal development and going to a breathwork class. And then I had to also follow my discomfort. And for a long time, when I didn't have necessarily the discernment and I could really trust my intuition and I had self-trust and I had all of these things, I just lent into the discomfort. Unless it was triggering my PTSD, I lent into the discomfort. And because it's, you know, I would be curious about doing something, but then the discomfort would come up of like, well, I don't know anyone, I've got no one to go with, what if this happens, what if that happens, what if I can't make it? And I just learned to really sit with discomfort, and because a lot of breaking patterns is quite simple, but it's the discomfort that comes up when you're doing it. So learning to just be, for example, is going to feel boring for people. It's going to feel uncomfortable if you have a lot of rushing thoughts because you haven't learned how to sit with them yet. And so for me, the real tangible movement that I started being able to create in my life, which then had all of this momentum, was following my curiosity, even when it was something as small as a dance class, and also following my discomfort, because discomfort was usually what I needed to lean into.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is so much truth in that, because normally when you're experiencing discomfort or resistance, whether that's boredom or being a bit afraid or whatever, unless you're in a situation where you're walking through a dark alley and there's like a dodgy guy following you, like completely different kind of discomfort. But
Let's
if it's
use
like,
our actual intellect.
if it's like, oh, I'm going to go and start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the first time, and you suck at it and it's hard and you have to move your body in a way that you've never done before, there's a discomfort there because you feel a bit stupid, you feel like you don't know what you're doing, you feel kind of like a fish flailing around.
The perfectionist part will come up where you're like, I'm not good at this, what are people going to think of me, I'm going to look silly. Yeah, and
the same goes for like dancing or going to a static dance, going to the gym for the first time, like whatever it may be that calls you. It could be writing or picking up an instrument. There's an inevitable frustration that happens when you realize that you're not good at that thing and that it's going to be hard for you to get good at it, and that there's people around you who are really good, and you naturally go into comparison mode, which is also, you know, that comparison is also a program that we've been given by society to compete and compare with each other, because, you know, humans and nature work together to create as a collective. We've been taught to be a sea of individuals fighting against each other for as much of the pie as we can possibly get. But then we get into comparison mode and we're like, oh fuck, I'm not good enough at this, I'm going to embarrass myself.
It's just a program.
Yeah, and it's a program. And whenever you have that resistance, it's a sign that you are rewriting a new program.
100%.
Because the program that you have is set up to protect you from leaving your comfort zone. Yep. So whenever you feel the program is like, no, stop, that's actually you showing yourself that you're overwriting the old script into a new script. So you should keep going, Whenever I feel that
100%.
kind of resistance, I'm like, okay, this is something I need to do.
And you can
You know?
also completely rewrite those programs, right? Like
Completely.
neuroplasticity, neuroscience has showed us that we can do it. I actually went on a date recently and I said to this guy, I was like, I love it when I get jealous. He gave me like the strangest look and he was like, sorry, what? And I was like, I love it because it's showing me something that I perceive that I want. Like, it's showing me something that I want that I don't have yet.
Yes.
And I wasn't talking about jealousy in this conversation in like an interpersonal setting, like romantically, but particularly for me in business, when I feel jealous of something or someone that I see, I'm like, cool.
There's something here that I need
There's
to work
something
on.
here I deeply desire.
Yeah.
What is it that I perceive them to have that I desire? And then I'm like, amazing. Now that like, I'm literally like getting goosebumps like talking about it because I'm like, I get excited now by jealousy.
Yeah.
Whereas like before, like if you allow it to, like my old program would have been comparison trap.
Yeah.
Oh, I could never live in Bali running my own business. Like it's easy for them. Like I couldn't do that.
I could never build that social media following. I'm never going to make money doing this.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get qualified in these things. Like, I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not this. I'm not that.
Yes.
And it's so easy to give up in that moment.
Exactly. But like leaning into the discomfort, because when you lean in and you choose differently and you create new neural pathways, which is the mindset aspect of things, which is so needed, not only can you rewrite patterns, but you can completely change them.
Completely. Yeah.
So like, I love jealousy.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite emotions.
And jealousy's taught me so much as well. And it's something, we will go on to the somatic stuff in a moment, but this is a great tangent.
Yes.
I've really learned so much in my life as well, because I think this natural comparison, not only as a woman who's like a high achiever, but also growing up in the Western world where you're constantly being shown images and marketing that is encouraging you to be always looking at who's ahead of you. How can you get ahead of them? How can you be faster, smarter, prettier, richer, more successful, more businesses, more skills? Like, it's always like more. And it's such a natural program that you just go into, because as soon as you're like this big, you are subconsciously seeing information all the time that's telling you that that's how you need to live. But as I started to grow, I also began to realize that this comparison, there's so much truth in the saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And I started to realize, actually, now when I compare myself to someone, why? Why is that happening? Going through like a line of internal inquiry and having the awareness in yourself to start building more of a natural inquiry state rather than a judgment and blame state and a kind of projecting. Instead, it's like, how can you internalize and start asking yourself the right questions moment to moment? When I see, I don't know, a girl who's stunning, like in amazing shape, she's beautiful, and like the guys really like her or whatever, like my mind is a fat, like unconfident, socially anxious, like, just very deeply dissatisfied teenager would be like, oh, I'm never going to be like that. I feel depressed. I hate myself. Like, I'm never going to be desired or wanted or anything. And you just go into this natural like defeatist mode, because you can see clearly that there's such a disparity between you and this person that like, and you view them as more valuable than you, that you just say, oh, there's no point. I'm just going to give up. I'm going to just hate on myself, or I'm going to bitch about that person and try and take them down and try and look for reasons that they're, I'm better than, and judge them.
Yeah.
And I started to notice, like, as I grew up, I'd be like, well, why can I not just give gratitude to the fact that this person's beautiful? And how can I start to see like, okay, well, this person's beautiful. What do I like about this person? What is it about them that's really nice and really special? And how can I show myself that that doesn't take away at all from my personal value? Because we're two completely different people, and it's fine. And I would always notice that when I would get triggered by somebody who had qualities that I felt that I was lacking, when I would actually just lean into gratitude and start saying, actually, she's beautiful, she's a nice person, she's kind, she's compassionate, like I actually want to get to know her, and then I get to know her and be like, yeah, she's fucking awesome. My mind would start to say, oh, well, you actually don't have as much of a reason to judge yourself and to judge this person. You start to see that they're a human just like you. And I think it really comes back to tapping into that self-acceptance and recognizing that the insecurities that you're having really has got nothing to do with that person. It's everything to do with your internal story that you're running about why you're not good enough, why you can't do this, why you can't have that. And the truth is, it's all just a story that you're running in your mind.
And it's all a judgment pattern.
It's all a judgment pattern.
The most judgmental of other people, the people that are most judgmental of others are self-judgmental.
Yes, it's all a reflection.
And that's also like why, and this is like a real tangent now, but even, for me, I've like looked at the places of my life where I am still judgmental. Do I enjoy watching reality TV? even just little things like that, because
Yeah.
it's like when you're perpetuating in something where there's a right and a wrong, there's unless we're talking about basic, you know, morals and ethics, don't kill people and harm people and stuff like that, but just generally, like, where do you enjoy judging others? And because as long as you are judging others, I believe that you're still going to have self-judgment.
Of course, yeah, you're feeding into that narrative subconsciously, right?
You're feeding into the narrative. And so, like, noticing where you judge others, not only is it beneficial to stop that because, you know, it's removing the humanness from someone else and, like, you don't know them. But as long as you're judging others, you're always still going to be judging yourself.
Yep, and you always judge in other people the most harshly, things that you dislike the most in yourself, or things that someone else that's hurt you have triggering you, you know? Like if your dad or your mum was a narcissist and you see other narcissists, you're like, oh, I fucking hate you because you remind me of the person that wounded me the most.
Yes.
So I'm gonna actually push away from you because I'm not gonna give you the chance to hurt me like they did. So it's so important to recognize that the internal world is always reflected out onto the external. Everything that you see and perceive outside of yourself is a reflection of how you're talking to yourself internally every single day. Someone who's a liar is going to think everyone else lies. Someone who cheats is going to think everyone else is capable of cheating. Someone who's honest sees the honesty in everyone. Someone who loves themselves is able to see the beauty in everyone. So it's really important that we start wiring the mindset element of it, the self-talk element of it, so our naturally negative mind that wants to survive and will look for all the problems can start reprogramming to more of like a gratitude, appreciation, present seeing, awareness, and introspection. I think that's a huge shift that can really help us to start to find that like that inner peace in our lives and start aligning a little bit more with what we want to be creating in our lives, as opposed to, you know, when we're running from these judgment programs, we're really just running from the unconscious. We're not really being present whatsoever.
It's usually the unconscious child.
The unconscious child.
Then it becomes your inner child. It's like literally steering the direction of your life rather than the wise, mature adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm a big fan of like guided meditation or embodiment practices where we actually do like reparenting. And this is something I really love doing with my clients like later on in my coaching programs. It's like a reparenting where we start to like get into as much as we can like that kind of theta brainwave kind of area, and then, you know, start tapping into what are the beliefs that I actually have about myself from my childhood that are preventing me from being able to step into my higher self and be authentic. When you're in that theta brainwave state, when you're falling asleep or you've just woken up and you do a meditation first thing, when you're still kind of waking up, and you can like visualize that child and visualize the way they think about themselves. Remember the moment when a belief was born that you're not good enough or whatever. In that moment, like, can you talk to that child and yourself and recognize and embrace them as a part of you, but tell them what they actually needed to hear in that moment. You know, tell them you are good enough. You're beautiful, you're strong, you're empowered, you're intelligent, you're completely capable of everything that you need to do. And reparenting yourself in those moments with these kinds of almost hypnotic meditation type of things. And I think this is like a nice element of mindset that kind of brings mindset and somatic together slowly. And then we can start moving into the more non-intellectualized things, but the felt things, the purely somatic work, like the breath work, embodiment, that kind of stuff, hot and cold therapy, these kinds of things that really like, there's no thinking going on. It's completely just your body working on those traumas, right? Because we can only intellectualize our problems so much.
And the way that I kind of, because, you know, people talk about the top down, the bottom up, they talk about somatic, they talk about mindset. The way that resonated the most for me, that really helped me understand stuff, is the mindset work, or the top down, is changing how you think to basically change your state and how you feel. Whereas the bottom up, or using the body, is using your state to change how you think.
Yes.
And the reason that I've gotten further and further involved in somatic work, in bottom-up work, is because 80 to 90% of signals to the brain actually come from the body.
Yep.
And it's why so often people just try to think their way to solving a problem that they're overthinking.
Yeah.
And they do it by consuming more information. They talk to more people to get, you know, advice about it. They will, you know, look for books, they'll look for courses, and it's like all you're actually doing is making the problem worse.
Yep.
If you're struggling with overthinking, you're just arming yourself with more information to go down rumination, to go down thought spirals, to consider all of the possible options and consequences, analysis paralysis, and then people get exhausted, they get overwhelmed, and they haven't even left their bed or the couch most of the time.
And so they haven't taken any action.
And they don't take any
all.
action. And so the bottom up is really focused on changing the state and how you feel, which then in turn will change how you think and change the thoughts that you have. And for me, a lot of my journey has been with breath work, which had the beautiful kind of simultaneous benefits of releasing a lot of emotions and trauma that I was actually holding onto in the body, and also starting to regulate my nervous system and expand my window of tolerance and create safety in my body.
Could you explain what breathwork is for the audience who, I'm sure undoubtedly many people, they've heard the word breathwork,
Yeah.
and they're probably like, what the fuck is this? Am I just breathing? Like,
Yeah. So breath work is effectively in the title, but it's actually active work, right? We're not talking about what's the kind of style of breath that we just do day to day that's involuntary control, right? We're talking about conscious attention to our breath. And that can be so many different iterations of breath, right? And you and I think were nerding out last night on like all the different like types and styles and what you would use. But the beautiful thing is you can elicit so many different results based on different breaths, right? Like it's actually astounding what you can do to your body in terms of releasing emotions, healing diseases and illnesses that are in the body. If you're having anxiety, to actually like calm your entire nervous system down. If you're struggling with energy, like up-regulating breaths to actually re-energize you. So it's breathwork is effectively any form of conscious effort and attention that you're putting into your breath, and that might be a whole bunch of different styles depending on what you want.
And why is it that breathing in this conscious, attentive way has such a huge impact on healing in the first place? Like, can I just breathe and think about my breath and that will heal me? Or what is it about these particular types of breath that actually has such a physiological impact?
So I'll use the example of the breath work that I practice is transformational breath work, which is much more along the lines of those like holotropic breath work kind of workshops that you do that's over an extended period of time. And the reason that one in particular, I wanted to use it as an example, is because the style of breath actually moves blood away from the prefrontal cortex. And so in doing that, you're kind of getting yourself out of the monkey mind, right? And you're getting yourself into that more subconscious state, which is, you know, your theta or your gamma brainwave states. And when people are then put into that state, you are able to, I mean, so many different things can happen, but a lot of emotions that are below the surface will start to come out. So it's incredibly healing for anything that you're like holding on to come out. It's a place of intuition for a lot of people because there's no story that's being put behind stuff. There's no subjective mind. And a lot of this is happening because in this style of breath, because it's quite activating and you're bringing in a lot of oxygen, you're blowing off a lot more CO2 and that alkalizes the blood. And so it's just this beautiful kind of journey that you're able to take people on, and they can get so many different things that are out of it, you know, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. And it's all in like kind of like just what you're doing to your blood chemistry effectively.
Yes, yeah, and it's releasing, you know, like Gabor Mate talks about this a lot, and I think, what's his
book
name?
is like right down here.
Yeah, I love the myth of normal, and when the body says no, like
That's when the
those
body
two
says
books,
no, I'm halfway through that at the
those
moment. It's
books changed my
phenomenal.
life. I realized how so many of my ailments, like, you know, issues with my health were just so linked to childhood trauma and like adult trauma, which my body was just holding on to. And so, you know, basically what he talks about is there's a compounding body of evidence in science that is just constantly reinforcing and proving this, that when you experience trauma, the body will hold on in the nervous system to that trauma in certain places. Often, particularly when you're a child, you don't have the tools and the mental capacity to understand what's going on. But you are experiencing trauma, whether you're being physically or sexually abused, mentally abused, psychologically abused, neglected, even being told to just go to your room when you're getting excited and you're like laughing and screaming and your parents just say, no, go to your room. I'm not going to give you love and attention.
Conditioning emotional repression.
Yes, exactly. And over time, like that, you know, particularly as a child, when you don't have any tools at all at that point to understand what's going on, your psychological mind doesn't have the capacity to intellectualize or make sense of it. So just to protect yourself, it just goes straight into the body, into the nervous system, and that pain and tension just gets stored in so many different places. And it causes chronic inflammation, it causes cancers, diseases, like anxieties, hormone malfunctions, like pretty much any ailment that you could possibly think of is heavily linked. Even like gut microbiome dysfunction could be linked to trauma. And, you know, it sits in the body, and you might be blissfully unaware. You might go through your whole life intellectualizing everything and learning all the things you need to learn and thinking, yes, I have this sorted out. And then one day, the tiniest little thing happens, and boom, your house of cards comes falling down, and you have a nervous breakdown, you have a panic attack, you get angry, you shout and scream like a child. Suddenly you're that 5-year-old kid again. And it's like all of the intellectualizing that you've done goes out the window, because your amygdala is completely in charge of everything that you're doing, which is the flight or fight response in your brain. And the only way that we can really work through this tension that's being stored in our body and our nervous system is by doing somatic work. There's no way to get through it with just intellectualizing alone. And you can try. I tried.
Oh, I tried.
I was like, oh, I'm really smart. I'm just going to fucking think my way through everything. Yeah. And I did my first breathwork session 1.5 years ago with Breathwork Bali. And I thought I was completely over childhood traumas and my dad and abandonment and all this kind of stuff. I thought I really worked through that shit.
Yeah,
and I had the most hysterical
You might have
release.
had a lot of therapy sessions where you've talked through it.
Never therapy. Just with like journaling and really like introspectively thinking about life and writing about things and painting and doing
acceptance,
all this acceptance, mindset stuff, you know, and habit shifting to make my life
and I'm
fulfilling.
guessing the breath work, you had a big emotional release.
It was so intense. It was like I had like a DMT trip level of release. It was I saw my I you know, I'll keep it short, but like I basically was my 9-year-old self, which for those of you who followed my channel for a while, you know that I lost my mum when I was 9, and my dad, you know, ensued into like an alcoholic depression, but he was my hero still, and we were really close, but at the same time he neglected me massively in terms of physical and like, you know, showing up kind of behaviors. Like he wouldn't really be there for me ever. He would just say all the right things but not do any of the right things. And it was very traumatizing as a 9-year-old to suddenly have, you know, this perfect idyllic life, and then all of a sudden, boom, like your whole world is falling apart, and the one person that was always your hero is now having a breakdown every day, and you don't even know what's going on, but you know for sure that you're not getting the care that you need, and you think it's your fault, right? And the only way that I could cope with all of that as a child was to just completely push away my childhood and step into adulthood as soon as I could, so I could intellectually just walk through life having like a very logical approach to everything. And I'm doing the breath work, 15-20 minutes in, I start to get the cramping and this, you know, the visuals and the sensation of just like, it's hard to explain, just kind of transcending out of like your thinking mind and into this vision quest. It's like the only way I can describe it. And I'm like walking through my house as a 9-year-old, as an adult, but the house I lived in when I was 9, the last house that I lived in with my mum. I'm walking through the house and it's completely abandoned, all the lights are off, it's dark. And I walk up the hallway into like where all of the bedrooms were, and I turn on the hallway light and I go to open the door for my bedroom that I used to be in. And I had this like hesitancy. I was really afraid of opening the door for some reason. I could feel this real like anxiety in my body of like what was going to be on the other side of that door. And I just kept doing the breath, and I was like, okay, just trust it. Like, you know, the guides were really amazing in there. They were, you know, encouraging us to let go and being really supportive, coming over and, you know, giving us touch to make us feel safe. And I said, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to open this door. So I opened the door and I just see my room, and my room is completely a mess. Like there's bits of paper that have been scrunched up and thrown all over the place, like writing and drawings all over the walls. It's like a crazy person's room, like a mental asylum. And there's just me, my little 9-year-old self, hugging my knees, rocking myself back and forward, just sitting on the floor at the bottom of the bed and just looking completely traumatized. And as I opened the door, the light from the door like shone on my face as a child, and child me looked up at adult me, and we caught eyes, and it was like for the first time in my life I saw her and she saw me, and I just burst into tears. I felt all of the pain of that child from the abandonment, and it was overwhelming because I never really let myself feel that stuff. I just bottled it up and protected myself, and it was the most intense feeling of abandonment, loneliness, neglect, not feeling good enough. It was so intense. And I came out of that breathwork session and I was like, what do I do with this now? Like, I thought I was okay, but now I've realized I'm not okay. And this has been at the bottom of my soul for so long. And then it began a huge journey for me as well. Like I'm sure it probably did with you, with your first experience, where I was just like, shit, I need to work on the somatic stuff now because I actually haven't figured anything out, really. What was your first experience like with breathwork?
It was similar in the sense I had a huge emotional release, and that's actually really common for women. You know, I've like had hundreds of women now that I've facilitated like in breathwork sessions, and the first one often it's similar in that sense where it's, you know, a lot of people don't realize that they're still holding on to stuff, right? And I think a real indicator is, can you think of an event or speak of an event or something that happened to you without feeling an emotional charge around it, right? Because if you still feel, you know, and for me, and that's how I know where I got to a point where I really feel like I healed my PTSD. It's like I can talk without emotional charge around,
without
pretty much
welling up.
Yeah, and so what a lot of people don't realize though is they're holding on in the body, and that manifests for most people with sleep issues, gut issues, skin conditions, reactivity, like kind of that real like they can go really quickly at people.
Volatility.
And volatility, yeah. And you'll get to a point where you're older where you have intellectualized things, right? Like you think that you've dealt with them, you know, like because you have the rational mind now of an adult that can usually see that your parents were doing the best that they could at the time, even if it didn't necessarily serve you at the time. Or even if they weren't, you get to a point of acceptance and you think that that acceptance means that you've dealt with it.
Yeah.
And what will often happen is then you get into this like subconscious state and it starts coming out. In my first breathwork session, I cried and cried and cried and cried. But I then did nothing with it. So it's, you know, I was then playing out the same patterns, and
so over time you just kind of went back to normal.
But
and you were aware that there was that problem there as well.
Well, I didn't, the thing is I didn't, and this is why a huge part of my work is around education, is that there wasn't the education in the breath work around like what could come up, why this is the case, the importance of somatic work, kind of the conversation that we're having today. And so I just felt called to do it, went in, cried a lot, came out.
Didn't know what to do with it,
That's
how I felt that's the first session for me as well. I felt kind of depressed the next day because I was like, fuck, I've got issues.
And then that can also create that kind of pattern of thought that we need fixing.
Yes.
And so what happened, but because I had that experience and I knew it felt cathartic, right? Even if it can feel quite heavy, there's still a sense of like relief that you've let something out.
It feels good. It feels good to know that even though it's like a heavy, like, oh, that was intense, and you're exhausted afterwards because you've released so much, you know that it was good for you to let it out.
Yes.
Even though it was difficult.
Yeah. And I've had sessions where I've come out and I felt exhausted for like 2 days afterwards. And I've come out and I've had sessions I feel really light afterwards. But so that when I came out to Bali and I was kind of going deep down this like self-discovery journey, I saw a breathwork class, and so I went and the same thing happened. But the difference this time is I was like, I know that this modality works for me. I know that I feel really called to do this. And so I kept in regular practice of it, in addition to having the top-down, the mindset stuff as well. So I found a coach that he would do bottom-up and top-down stuff, but he didn't actually do breath work, so I did that separately. And for me, over time, I just slowly released more and more and more. And then with the mindset stuff as well, I was able to really start creating new neural pathways, new belief systems, as well as releasing all of this like trauma that I was holding onto and I was storing in my body, until I eventually got to a place where I was like, man, I actually like genuinely have worked through it.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well with the breath work. It's like, I felt like the blessing is having had so much experience with the top down stuff that like when you get to the point that you do breath work, like I've had so many experiences with introspection and trying to reprogram and using things like which are kind of more softer somatics like meditation and embodiment, and you know, I had like an awareness of the body and what was going on, but it's that releasing element. That was the first time that I really felt that true like intense releasing experience. And it was really nice because even though I came out of the first breathwork session like you, I knew it was good for me, I knew I was going to do it again, and I remember coming out of that session I was like, I want to learn to do this for people. I remember distinctly being like, this is something I have to learn to do because I want to give people this gift as well, because I didn't even know why it impacted me so much, but it did. And I knew that was a pivotal moment where my life completely changed. It was such a synchronicity, by the way, because I only went because this random girl that I was sat next to at Shady Shack in Canggu, me and her started having a chat, and she gave me and my partner at the time like free tickets.
Oh, okay.
That's the only reason I went. And I had no idea what to expect. I knew breathwork was good, but I also heard like very minimal about it. I was like not expecting it. Anyway, synchronicities, things fall into place. But because of having done so much work as a coach and coaching people and coaching myself on shifting and mindset work and integration of the things that we're learning through building awareness at large, I felt like it was easier to integrate because I thought, okay, well, I need to journal on this. I need to understand what happened, where it came from. I need to sit with these emotions and not try and force them to change and be happy again, but actually just be like, okay, I feel drained, I feel sad, I feel surprised, and just let myself feel those things. And the integration kind of naturally happened over time, and I, like you, started going to breath work really regularly because it was so healing. And it's kind of where the top and the bottom marry up together. It's like you have the bottom up of like the release and the letting go and feeling into your intuition and understanding your body and what's going on and listening to those cues in yourself. But then you also have the top down element, which is how do I now take what I've experienced and use it to help me reprogram? How do I change my my subconscious thoughts that are going to keep trying to put me back in that place and start rewiring them so I can say, well, no, I can practice embodying gratitude. I can practice embodying self-love, real confidence. And it's really beautiful when you get through that process and you really genuinely feel like you have repaired that broken wall in yourself, and you've actually built something that's way more stable than it could have ever been had you not gone through that work, right? Yeah.
And it's I loved like hearing your experience with that, because it's so actually hard to explain to people that have never done this type of breath work before.
Yeah.
Because, and I have a lot of clients that they'll be like, they think it's like meditation.
Yes.
And so it's really hard to kind of, until you experience it, to really kind of understand what we're saying. But I kind of spontaneously made the decision this year to get qualified because I just wanted to learn more deeply for myself. But I got to a point as well where I was running basically a top-down business, a mindset business. And I was like, I really need to change that because it's no longer what I believe. And that's where I've continued to bring breathwork in. And the one thing that continues to blow me away is how life-changing just one session can be. But like, if you are able to get out of your head, that's the only thing that I will say. Like, some people need more than one session to be able to actually drop in. If you can, I'm literally blown away how many people's lives it changed. I had someone message me a couple of nights ago, an event that I ran in Sydney, and literally told me how much it changed her life and how she uses some of the somatic techniques I taught in that breathwork event after she goes to therapy sessions now, which is the top down, right? Like it's the talking. And I honestly feel like it is like the greatest gift that people, if they can actually experience it, because you start recognizing and being able to embody the emotional stuff that we're talking about. Actually, because you can feel it, you feel that you're holding on to stuff. You can feel what it's like to let go. You can feel what it's like to be in your body rather than in your head.
It's a tension release. And it's funny how when you release that tension in your body, your mind also releases. Like, since my dad died in February, like I did so much breath work. The day before I found out he died, I was already doing breath work because at the time I was trying to lean more into my feminine energy and, accept the fact that I felt intuitively for a while that he was coming close to that point of dying. So I really wanted to just start working on that stuff anyway. And then, lo and behold, the day that I did my first private one-to-one breathwork session with my coach Denise, I got the call that he had died. The first day, it was crazy. And then, the next day and the day after, I was like, okay, I'm doing back-to-back breathwork sessions because I know that there's a lot of things that I'm going to try and go back into as a pattern for coping by just like pushing it down and bottling it up that I don't want to happen. And I had the most intense releases and just eerily supernatural experience, particularly the day after my dad died. I really felt the presence of my mum and my dad, like putting their hands on me during the breath. And I was ridden with guilt because I was all the way in Bali and my dad died and I wasn't there, and my poor brother was looking after him, and I just felt like so much sorrow picturing what it must have been like for him to die alone in his apartment and to be gone for maybe 2 days and nobody to even know that he was gone. And I felt so much guilt around the fact that I wasn't there, and also just like pity over the fact that that was how his life ended. And he was such a good man. He was just so lost for so long, and he lost touch with himself and couldn't get out of his mind. Ultimately the pain that he was holding on to was just so great that he had to just always try and escape everything. And I just felt so much guilt. I started saying, I'm sorry under my breath, like crying my eyes out. And then I just felt like this sudden like opening of forgiveness and love and being held. It's the only way I can explain it. It was like an energetic, like being held. And it was kind of like my heart just went, like it was, yeah, at first like this real like cramping knots and twisting in my body. And then it kind of became this like kind of feeling. I don't know how to explain it. Like it's very hard to explain unless you go through these things, I think. And then I felt this feeling of a hand on my chest and a hand on my belly. And then this like mothering energy and fathering energy of like being safe and being accepted, which was super intense to me. And I felt intuitively that it was my mum and my dad. Continues to exist in like the ether, at the very least, in that like collective conscious construct that maybe is above this 3D reality, maybe in the 4D where there's no time. And yeah, I cried my fucking eyes out and I felt this real like being held. It was super intense. I've never cried like that in my entire life. And I am a crybaby. I cry a lot when I need to cry. And
Not a bad thing.
No, it's great. I love it. I feel great afterwards. It's a real release. But I came out of it, and then Denise, my coach, like she was crying. She doesn't normally cry. She holds space, and she doesn't allow herself to like get wrapped up in the emotions of the container.
She's holding space for, yeah.
But she was crying her eyes out as well, and like her eyes were like she looked so sad, and she was like to me like, I don't normally cry during the session, but like there was such an intense energy in the room that like I couldn't help myself. And she said that I didn't even say anything to her about what I experienced. Like she was banging the drum when I felt these hands on me, by the way, so it definitely wasn't her. Like it was just me and her in the room, and she was like banging on the drum. And then she was like, you know, your mum and dad were in the room with you today and they were holding you. And I was like, fuck, I didn't say that to you. How do you know this? Like, I didn't say that. I was thinking it. She said that she could feel them like literally on my body and like holding me. And for me, that was like, it was crazy because it just confirmed to me that it was not only in my mind, but it was like an real energetic release. So I feel that these states, they not only open you to heal and release what's in your body, but they kind of open your conscious aperture to like other states of being, similar to like a psychedelic experience where you can witness realms that maybe you normally can't witness when you're in this sober waking state where you're filtering everything through the logical mind. As soon as that logical thinking ego has been removed from the equation, suddenly you get into the realm of intuitive feeling. And I think that place really opens you to experience really powerful states as well. And many people say they experience like DMT type trips on.
I think it's like kind of important to say though that like a lot of people will try and intellectualize the experience,
yes,
right?
Definitely.
And it's like and it's something that can't be.
No.
For a lot of people, a lot of experiences. And so, you know, I'll have a lot of clients that will, you know, I always do post-integration care.
So important.
And they'll kind of say, like, they'll kind of go through that process and I'll be like...
Telling a story.
Yeah, and they'll be trying to like work out what happened, why it happened, what it means. And I'm like, what you actually need to do, the whole point of like being in your body with this is to just be with it.
Just feel with it.
And to not, because you're not actually going to necessarily figure out or know what you need to. So take whatever lessons that you need to, that you felt from the experience and integrate them, but try not to intellectualize it.
Yeah, and then try and
much.
just let it go and not attach a story to it, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can be really intense and negative, like negative feeling emotions, negative quote unquotes, that are really uncomfortable. And then you can start attaching a story like I'm wrong, I'm broken, all that kind of stuff. And that's not helpful to you at all.
No, absolutely not. What's some other somatic work that you do that's really helped you other than breath work?
So, hot and cold therapy has been something that's really tremendously helped me. I think it is definitely like a trauma, and not even just trauma release, because I think it's more than just trauma. It's about like, how can we get present? How can we look after our body? How can we ground ourselves in getting out of our head and being right here now, living in an authentic way, right? And for me, the ice bath has been my saving grace. And my friends in Koh Phangan will roll their eyes when they see this part of the clip, because every single one of my friends has all gotten sick. You know, even my partner would get sick and we would be like lying in bed together. He'd be sick with like a flu or a fever or something. And every single day I'd be cuddling him, giving me a kiss. I wouldn't get sick. And the only thing that was different between my life and his life was the fact that I would get in the ice bath every morning. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have been in a state of like stress, like mental stress, overthinking, feeling frustrated, having had an argument with my partner, or having issues with my business, or feeling like I wake up and like, oh my God, I've got such a huge to-do list to do, and I start stressing and thinking about the future. And then every morning, first thing I do, I will go to the ice bath. And the ice bath where I gym is like real ice. It's not like the one at Wanderlust. It's like an actual bath of ice. And you get into it and it's like this huge well, and your whole body is completely submerged around ice blocks just pressing you everywhere, and it is really cold. And you're so shocked by the fact that you're in that cold moment, and the only way that you can get through the ice bath is by breathing, settling into your body, and starting to really tap into awareness of the fact that what you're feeling is just a sensation. It starts, for me anyway, it gets me out of judgmental thinking and into just present moment awareness without any duality of what's right and what's wrong. And I'll get in the ice and like it'll be fucking freezing, but I'll be like, there's no difference between the inside and the outside. It's just I'm feeling a sensation of cold, just like I feel the sensation of warm. And it doesn't have to be labeled as good or bad. It's just a sensation. It's just an experience. And the more I can feel into that, the more I start to take myself out of the mindset of projecting negative expectations and blame and stress and frustration. And the amount of times I'll go into the ice bath in a state of stress and I'll come out feeling like, wow, life is amazing, and feeling grateful and feeling present. And so for me, that's been amazing. And I also really, really believe that it has helped my immune system to be much healthier, because like I said, everyone has gotten so sick in my group multiple times. And we have a very close friend group, like we're all hugging each other and stuff. And everyone's gotten sick, and I haven't gotten sick once. I've been lying in the bed or on a sofa next to someone who has like a fever and chills multiple times, and I haven't got any ailment whatsoever. And I really, really believe that's because I'm going in the ice every day, and I'm allowing my body to build resilience, and also mentally, like physiologically, I'm allowing my immune system the space to adapt to different situations. I don't know exactly physiologically why it works, but I do know that Wim Hof himself he fought off, and he taught many people to fight off neurotoxins or endotoxins or something that was like injected into their body just by doing this breath and having the cold exposure. And he repeated that experiment with multiple of his students, and they actively showed that their bodies would fight off like a virus or something just by breathing and by getting in the ice. It's fascinating how that can shift your physiology in that moment.
Well, it's the extreme kind of example of like changing your state to change how you think, right? And I think anyone that struggles with functional freeze, that struggles with overwhelm, low energy, you know, that like real analysis paralysis where you just get exhausted by all of the options and overthinking will benefit from cold exposure, whether that's an ice bath or whether it's starting with cold showers, because you know, most people don't need an actual ice bath to start with this. Like, you're going to be struggling at 12 degrees.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, I think when you can really incorporate that with some of the stuff that you were talking about, because I was interested to see how you get through that really, really cold and to kind of bring yourself back to the present moment, because that's what it's doing, right? It's like forcing you to do it. And for me, like a lot of the cold exposure is very much how I had to get through chronic pain from breaking my back. And a lot of the way that you have to deal with chronic pain is you actually have to bring pain in rather than trying to push it away. And the cold is the same, because what we often do in life, and the reason that I love doing it regularly, these cold exposure, is because it really teaches you to lean into uncomfortability and not to try and push away resistance. Because if you get into an ice bath and you keep trying to push it away, it is like, it's unbearable.
Yeah, you're watching the clock into the future, and you just can't cope with it because it's forcing you to be present.
Yes, and you're like, whereas like for me, I'm like, especially when it's really cold and like, I you know, you're right, some of the gyms here, they're not that cold. But when we're talking below 4 degrees, like for me, and Nirvana is actually great. They're really cold. Ice, and so it's, when I'm in that, I really have to sit with like, okay, the first thing I want to do is I'm like, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's too cold, it's cold. And then it's like, okay, where can you actually feel it? What is the sensation? What does pain actually feel like? How can you start like bringing this in? Okay, it hurts. Where does it hurt? And the more that I feel into it and feel into that presence, then sometimes like I won't even notice like 5 minutes has passed.
Yeah, exactly. When you can really just sink in. And I love that, like, it forces you to be present. And if you're doing anything other than being present, you can't cope with it. You
No,
get
you
out.
can't.
I see people get in the ice bath at my gym back in Koh Phangan, and like they get in for like 5 seconds and
and
they're
then
out.
Yeah.
And it's because they're so busy thinking, oh my God, I can't wait for this to end.
Yeah, it's
They're
too
thinking
cold.
in the future.
Yeah.
They're not learning the lesson that the ice is
Yeah.
supposed to teach
Yeah.
you, which is to be present. The only way you can get through it is just by recognizing it's not as bad as you think it is. And
the
there's a
breath.
story that you're attaching, and the breath as well.
Because
is an amazing
that is
combination.
actually what disrupts the stress
Yeah,
state, which is
yeah.
because a lot of people, like, again, cold exposure can be used for different things. You can actually just use it for that intense, like, upregulation and getting energy and going about your day, or you can use the breath to disrupt the stress state to then actually start activating the parasympathetic state, and actually, like, you'll feel it in the after. You know, when you like real like soften in,
Yeah,
and
and
you're
you
like
soften into it,
You're,
it's
you're
actually
like,
really
yes,
nice.
it's calming, right? And
Yeah.
you're like, why do I feel so calm and so euphoric when a second ago I was hyperventilating?
Exactly. Especially the first time, like even at like Wanderlust, it's not even that cold. But I remember the first time I got in, I was like, oh my God, it's too much. And I got out after like 5 seconds.
It's because
my
comfortable at the
your
time.
mind is just like, oh my God, discomfort, no. But the whole point is, again, leaning into discomfort.
Yes.
And recognizing that when you do lean into discomfort and you soften to it, there's so much growth and expansion that comes in that place. And I'm constantly amazed, like every time going into the ice bath and witnessing that, like it will be like 5 minutes in, 6 minutes in, 7 minutes in, and it feels really good. And you can like do you shouldn't, but I do. But I'll
Heavy
do
disclaimer.
Heavy
Do
disclaimer.
not fry your nervous system.
Do not go in and do Wim Hof in the ice bath. But when I go in and do it at my own risk, which I take every day at high risk.
Please sign disclaimer
Please
below
sign the
before
disclaimer
listening to
form
this.
in the description. Every time I get in the ice bath, and like I'll be doing the Wim Hof, and in Wim Hof's breathing, which is, it's not actually his breathing because it's like an ancient like Tibetan monks thing that they did, and he basically just started doing. But it's his brand now, so we call it Wim Hof. Anyway, when he does this breathing, you do 30 rounds of this breath, and then you exhale, and then you hold. And because you've flushed so much carbon dioxide out of your body, you just don't feel the desire to breathe. You don't feel the urge to breathe, which is why people tend to black out sometimes, because they don't realize that they need to breathe, and then they just don't. But it's amazing to be in the ice. There's nothing to distract you. There's no breath to focus on. There's no thinking. There's just feeling the ice, and you're completely silent for sometimes 2 minutes or something, just holding your breath. And the only thing that you can experience is the cold against your skin, the cold in your fingers, the cold in your toes, and really like unwiring this program of duality that we've built, that there's good and bad, and starting to recognize that actually good and bad are just concepts that we need to have so we can make sense of the physical world. But like in reality, they're just two parts of the same coin. You can't have up without down. You can't have light without dark. You can't have masculine without feminine. It's just impossible. They're part of the same whole. And starting to like feel into that on like a body level, how like the warmth in me is only warm because there's a cold outside of me. And the cold outside of me is only cold because there's a warmth inside of me. And like feeling that barrier begin to break on like a physical level without not thinking about it, that you're just feeling it. And actually witnessing that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt and it doesn't feel good. It just is.
It just is.
Yeah, it's super cool.
And what you touched on just then is like such a beautiful lesson as well, is because we spend so much time chasing what we have deemed to be good or right. You know, the human emotional experience is just like the prime example of that, right? Like the happiness, the joy, the excitement. And when we experience the opposite of that, which is the only way that we actually know that those things are what are good.
The only way we can gauge it.
We spend so long shaming ourselves and trying to bypass the negativity, the heaviness, the sad moments, the grief, the loss. And it's like, they're both just two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
And we need to experience all of them.
Yes.
But the longer that what you run from, you run into, what you resist, persist, the more that you run from the negative, inverted commas, towards the positive, the more that you're actually making it harder for yourself to have a lived experience. Because you're constantly blaming and shaming for what you're perceiving to be negative and trying to cling and attach so hard to the positive experiences. And doing somatic work, which is forcing you into the present, really forces you to start breaking away and dissolving some of those attachments.
Yes. And other examples of like somatic work, I suppose, which could help for anyone else who's wondering if they don't want to do the ice bath, they're not ready for the breath work. You know, there's like embodiment, which is like, doing like silent meditation where you're just feeling into the body and starting to really understand like, okay, what does it feel like in my stomach? What does it feel like here? Okay, there's pain there. Can I just sit with it and let it be and not label it as good and bad? I would say yoga is also a form of maybe kind of somatic.
I would say like any form of movement or dance, really, because
ecstatic dancing. Oh my God,
I actually still haven't done ecstatic dancing,
but
I've been
a trip yesterday.
I think the beautiful part of somatic is exploring what different things mean for different people. And so for me, like dance that I've really started leaning more into is like sensuality and like sensual floor work and really kind of connecting with my body in a way that feels sensual and at times sexual with no gaze from anyone. Right? There's no male gaze, there's no like, you know, if I do it in a class, it's a group of empowered women that are doing it, right?
Just connecting with your body and connecting with that sensuality that's within all of us.
And that is incredibly healing, especially for someone like, you know, any women that are listening to this that do have like trauma around men that might, you know, maybe even just like sexual harassment in the workplace or, you know, as someone that like I developed boobs at quite, you know, I was an E-cup by the time I was 16. Wow. So like even there's just all of these like little elements that can force you to really disconnect from your sensuality as a woman. And so finding somatic work that really reconnects you with your body, because when you are connected with your body, it's when you can start actually being more present and really intuitively moving through life, right?
Yeah, and there's anything that is allowing your body to have some sort of release. It's so powerful. Like I think dance was a great example that's very accessible to the average person. Not dancing when you're drunk in a club.
No,
but
because
dancing
because that also is that's a mask.
Yeah,
and it's
you're
concealment.
You're not actually allowing when you get drunk and then you go dance in a club, like you need like a substance in you to make you feel comfortable enough to express what your body wants to express. And a lot of the time also we're not really dancing for ourselves. We're looking at everyone. We're pointing at each other. We're making gestures. It's kind of a show.
Like a cute guy or girl, and you're like kind of like dancing in a way that you think might look good to them or might be appealing to them.
Instead of just feeling your body. And when you go to something like ecstatic dance or a dance class, or you just put your headphones on in your room and put on a tune that just makes you feel amazing and just dance your ass off, close your eyes. That is such a powerful somatic release. And I have to say, this is one thing that my dad really did get right. Like from the youngest age, I remember just being so embarrassed by my dad because when he would dance, he would go nuts. Like even he would be in the living room and like I'd play one of his favorite songs, like Crazy by Niles Barkley. He'd just be like doing all these like crazy dance moves. Sometimes be doing stuff that looked like he was doing kata. You know, and I'd be like so embarrassed as a child. He'd be like, "Come and dance with me," and I'd be like, "No, please,
stop
like,
embarrassing
don't
me, Dad."
embarrass me in front of everyone." But then, like, as I grew up, I realized that I'm really grateful that I subconsciously was watching him have no shame whatsoever around moving his body and dancing, because I have never had shame when it comes to dancing. But I've always felt like it's been really easy for me to like just be comfortable to let my body move, and it feels
I've
really
seen
good.
you dance, and you can tell. You can genuinely tell that you're in, because I'm someone I have had that, right? And it's been, and it still is like a real like part of my somatic journey is like learning to express myself authentically in a way that feels good when there's other people watching.
And realizing it's not about them. This is what leads me perfectly to, I think, the best advice that my dad ever gave, and it wasn't to me, it was to Louis, but once Louis was at my place with me and my dad, and he was talking about how the night before he went on a night out with some of our friends, and he was feeling really in his head. He was not feeling comfortable to dance, and he knows that my dad's the kind of guy who he used to just fucking dance his ass off in the living room, totally sober. He'd be dancing like Jagger, like crazy. Terrible. So
the blues,
he just loved it. He'd be like doing all this crazy shit with his arms, and super loose. And he was like telling my dad about how he was feeling and how he just didn't know how to get into the dancing and stuff. And then my dad just interrupted and he was like, "Look, if you're dancing for anybody other than yourself, then you're not really dancing." And for me, that was such a poetic and beautiful thing to say, because dancing is not about anyone but yourself. Like when I'm really dancing, my eyes are closed, and for all I know, I could be the only person on the dance floor. Like it's great when you have your eyes open and you can like do some contact dancing or flow with someone where you have that kind of connection. But even then, like, that's really creative when you're in that flow. But I think when you're getting into like the somatics of dancing, the best place to start is like, you know, go, even if you're just going to try it on a night out, go for a little night out, don't drink anything, put some sunglasses on in the dance floor, close your eyes, and just let your body like feel the music and move and witness how different it is to when you're looking around for validation or looking at what people are thinking about you or looking at other people's dance moves and trying to copy it. But just let your body move and surprise yourself, because your body knows what to do. This is like an epigenetic deeply rooted thing. Like movement is in our genes. We have always danced around fires. We've always moved, and our bodies know what to do. You just have to give them the release of being allowed, getting your head out of the way and allowing your body to just show you what it knows, right?
Most major cities, there's actually, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's dark dancing or something where it's actually pitch black.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
so the whole purpose is for people to go. So if somebody's listening to this in like, you know, a London or a Sydney or something and wants to like do something like this, but still feels like they'd be a bit self-conscious or they might resort to drinking, to actually seek this out, because when you go in, it's dark.
So there's no one who can watch you at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
And for someone who doesn't have access to that, you could just do it in your bedroom.
Well, yeah.
To start off with, but I know it's different. It's like people sing in the shower and they have an amazing voice, but they never sing in front of anyone else.
But it's
taking
slowly
that stepping
expanding,
steps,
your window of tolerance, right? Like from a
Exactly.
nervous system regulation point of view. Like if you're not yet comfortable doing it in public, how can you slowly edge out of your
How
comfort
can you be
zone?
okay with yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's going
Yeah.
back to what we said in the beginning, being, you know, what you're feeling internally is going to be reflected out into the external. So if you can first start internally with your own self, with your own company, get comfortable with doing certain things, and it becomes easier to do it in front of other people. Like I like to chant Om after I finish a meditation, like a Om for like a, you know, the whole breath. And I would always do that on my own, and I found really embarrassed to do that in front of other people if I was, I don't know, meditating at like the spa area of my gym. But now I don't give a shit, because I did it with myself so many times that it becomes easier to then now just say, well, nobody gives a shit, I'm just going to do it because it feels right. So having those stepping stones is super, super important. Yeah. That reminded me of another type of somatic release that is really powerful though, which is sounding and singing and music, like not listening to like a Taylor Swift song and singing along, but just like actually like the act of just singing or like making sounds or alming or going, or like sometimes I'm really angry and I don't know what to do with that anger to regulate. Sometimes I'll just be like driving my motorbike. And
I did that the other night. I was like, I just had this like such angry energy, and like I don't get. And the thing is, like, I've had a really interesting relationship around shame and anger, and you know, I think it's important for people to recognize like some emotions you're actually more comfortable expressing than others.
Yes.
I'm fine expressing sadness. I have no shame around it.
Same.
I will cry if somebody judges me for it. That says way more about them. Anger, on the other hand, is something that I've really had to work with, because anger to me represented abuse.
Yeah.
And so now when I have angry energy, I have to be like really like make myself express that. And that's through, you know, the other night I went for a drive and I actually screamed.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, the sounding stuff that you're talking about, so important, but for different reasons, right? So like the omming activates the vagus nerve, right? And so there's going to be benefits for you doing that versus something like anger where you're letting sound out. It's actually expressing the emotion, because when we suppress sound, suppression of sound and suppression of emotion go hand in hand. And so like when you look at small children and they stub their toe, they scream, they cry, 5 minutes later they've forgotten about it. But as adults, when we don't express it and we don't sound it, we bottle it up. And so where can you actually just be more expressive with sound?
Yeah, exactly. And it's so important, because we don't know how to express those emotions. We never allow ourselves to share that just in like a physiological way. Sometimes you don't need to say anything about it, but you just need to physiologically express the emotion of excitement, sadness, anger. When you have sadness, you cry and you go, and like when you're angry, you want to fucking scream and you want to like move your body in a way that's kind of like getting that tension out by really tensing and then releasing it. Like, but we don't get shown how to do that. We never get given an education on what's acceptable on that. So as adults, what we do is we bottle it up, we bottle it up, we bottle it up, and then one day we hit a breaking point and we shout at someone. We make it their fault. We blame them because we don't know how to take responsibility for our emotions. We make everyone else responsible. You made me feel this way. How dare you? You're the worst. You're making me feel like this and you're making me feel like this. And it's like, yes, they're triggering you, but that emotion is yours to look after. That emotion is yours to express in a healthy way. And anytime you're directing an emotion at someone where you're making them responsible for it, you're not dealing with that and regulating yourself in a healthy way. So for me, anger is similar for you. My dad used to be very volatile. And sometimes he would get really angry and shout, and he was really scary for both me and my brother when he was in that really angry state. So I have a lot of shame associated with anger because I don't want to be scary. And I also, as a child, I felt afraid of my dad when he would show that emotion. I felt less connected with him. So I think I built like an association that if I show anger, whoever I show that in front of is going to like me less and be less connected with me for showing that emotion. So I would just bottle it up until I get so angry, and then I'd like hit the wall in private in my room or something, and I'd hurt myself, and it was so stupid. And now sounding for me is sounding and Muay Thai or exercise, like just doing a hard workout, like doing a dirty CrossFit workout, something like that. That really helps me to get rid of like the tension in my body that's associated with anger. But in the moment that I need to express it, I go for a drive on my motorbike. I'm driving down the road and I'm just like, like sometimes I'm really angry, just go, you fucking asshole, like
Literally,
screaming
the
down
other
the
night
bike.
I put my AirPods in, noise cancelling, screamo punk music. Like I think it was like even like Linkin Park was on there, so I couldn't hear anything else, and I just screamed because I also like there's varying degrees that you can try, right? Like you can thump pillows, you can like scream into pillows, but like sometimes you actually just need that primal expression out.
You do.
And it, not only is it cathartic to actually release it, because like all emotions are energy in motion, right? If you actually allow yourself to feel them, they will move, right? It's when you suppress them that we like cling on to them and we like kind of they get stuck and we have the residue. So like if you'll actually just allow that screaming out, not only is it cathartic and the energy moves through you, it's also really healing if you know, are people like us that do have shame around anger, right? Because for me to develop, you're changing the narrative, and I'm developing a healthier relationship with anger, and I'm therefore not shaming myself subconsciously around holding certain emotions over others. And so it's just like so multi-purposed in actually allowing ourselves to express through sounds.
And sound is also an amazing thing to combine with like movement, but not in the same way that we said earlier, like dancing or doing yoga or anything like that. Like, but doing some kind of movement that's like kind of enacting that emotion. Like sometimes when I feel really stressed or like frustrated, say something's gone wrong with work and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do with it, I really love just being able to like shake it out. You know, like go like and just like shake it out.
I'm
like
so glad you
really
said that,
shake my body.
I was actually going to talk about one of the most like powerful like somatic practices that I've had, which is it's called tremoring, which is it's a bit hard to kind of explain, but like shaking for some people can work the same. And if you, the person that kind of taught me, and I've like gone on to teach other people, is if you think of like an animal in the wild, like a deer that's being chased by a lion, chase, they're in this upregulated fight or flight mode. You know, for whatever reason, lion goes away. The animal will then literally shake it off before they go back to grazing. And it's how they downregulate, right? It's how they go from this fight or flight, like back to, you know, the homeostasis. And so when we shake, or like tremoring for me, which is like slightly different, it's a down-regulating tool.
Well, the expression "shake it off"
is
obviously there for a reason. Shake it off, and it does actually work when you shake it off. Like the amount of times I've been stressed and I've just been like, I feel like a judgment for how stupid it must look, but it's just like shake my fucking arms and shake my head and shake my body and just like like just let it out. It makes you just feel like you're just like if you have water all over your skin and you just like shake your hands and the water just comes off of your fingers and stuff. It just really feels like you're just letting it go in that moment and like forcing yourself physiologically to be in a different state of being. That's amazing that animals do that. I've noticed it, but I've never paid attention to the fact that it's like coming from being in a state of stress.
It's self-regulating.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, when you first wake up in the morning, you get like a bump of cortisol naturally when you first wake up. And I noticed that a lot of animals, when they first wake up, they'll stretch and then they shake. Isn't that so interesting?
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, like dogs, birds, cats, like they stretch, they do a little down dog or whatever, and then they like shake it up and then they start their day. So sometimes when I'm feeling stressed in the morning, I have a little shake.
No, I love that.
And it really helps me to just like snap out of whatever like cortisol bump that I'm getting caught up in my mind.
I love that. I also I love the advice that your dad gave you about, and because I think it kind of applies to any form of somatic work, right? Not just like the dancing, which is the context that he was talking about, that you're not, if you're moving or doing this for anyone but you, like it's not actually movement, it's not actually dance.
It's a show.
It's a performance.
Yeah.
Right? And so like if you're thinking about how do I move for someone else so this looks a certain way, so it feels a certain way, it's actually a performance. It's not like the innate somatic work, which is what you're trying to do.
And this is a really like very brief side topic, but it just really reminded me of a conversation I've been having with a lot of my girlfriends recently. But like when it, like as a woman as well, I feel like there's such an element of performance that is imposed. I think for men and women, of course, there's performance elements that are different. But particularly when it comes to like men and women together, I feel like when it comes to like the realm of like sensuality and sexuality, there is a real performance even there. And you know, I also think that having a deeply connected sexual experience with someone that you love or that you care about a lot, and you really are connecting on like an emotional and physical level, being able to experience like sex with someone is also very deep somatic release. If you actually are really connected, not just like, yeah, we met on a night out, we were drunk, we had sex.
We had a connection. We're not.
Yes, but when you have like a real connection with someone and you have kind of like almost a like quote unquote tantric kind of experience where you're really connecting with them. It's not just like you're having sex and it feels good, but you're connecting on like a body to body level. That is such a sacred, special union of like a time, the only time when the masculine and feminine can physically become one. And obviously this only applies to like heterosexual situations, but I mean, I'm sure you can also have this with like bisexual or like, you know, guy and guy, girl and girl, but I'm just talking from my experiences and also the experiences of my girlfriends that I've spoken to about this. There's like a real element of performance that a lot of women get shown from like porn and stuff like that. We get shown an element of performance that like our job is to perform, to look a certain way, to act a certain way, and to like create the final result, which is the man's pleasure. And there's not very much emphasis on really how a woman is supposed to experience pleasure in her body. And there's a lot of shame around a woman experiencing pleasure in her body. But it's a really nice release to just feel, like you said earlier, sensual without it needing to be this like show for anyone, without anyone looking so you can be sexy for them, but just being that for yourself. And that's a really big part of tapping into the divine feminine, is owning your sensuality and holding space for your sensuality only for yourself, not for the masculine to come in and take it, but it's actually just so you can feel sexy for yourself. And, you know, I would say that, I mean, there's many studies that have kind of shown this, but I would say that majority of women at some point have faked orgasms and faked like pleasure in order to perform, to show the guy that he's doing a good job, but they're not actually really feeling anything that they're showing. And, you know, it's so important that in all realms of somatic release, in all realms of like feeling into our body, we actually authentically feel it instead of thinking what this should look like. How should this feel? How should this look? When I do breath work, should I cry? Should I laugh? Other people are laughing. Should I start laughing? No. Don't think about what anyone else should do or what you should look like. Just be here now with this experience. And that's when you really feel the benefits of all these different types of releases, whether it's crying, breath work, hot and cold exposure, like dancing, singing, sounding, sex, whatever it might be, any kind of physiological experience that you're having, like feel it instead of thinking about it.
And I actually want to add onto from what you've just saying, like a really, because it's something that I've been doing at the moment. It's almost like a pleasure embodiment.
Yes.
Which is, because pleasure, isn't just sexual,
No.
right? But a lot of people, especially people that are stuck in their heads and they might have been in that like kind of over masculine energy, will struggle to hold pleasure. And really sitting with, you know, having a cup of coffee and where do I feel that in my body?
How good it feels to like just feel it going through your throat,
or like
and
even
stuff.
like the other, you know, I've had aircon issues in here for ages, and so it's been so hot. And so the other day I went out and I bought ice cream for everyone here.
Oh, so nice.
And then, but I was eating it and I was like, because it just felt so good. And I was like, where do I actually feel this in my body? You know, like being really present with it, because the more that you're able to be present and notice where you feel pleasure and what pleasure actually feels like to your body, the more that you can actually connect with it and the more that you can be present.
Yeah. And it's going back to what you were saying earlier about like conscious eating, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to eat consciously, you're really thinking about the textures and the flavors and everything. And
God, I'm getting hungry now.
yeah, me too. I'm super hungry. I haven't eaten yet today. I had a protein shake. That's it. Like I've been working like crazy today.
Oh my goodness, I could make us some after this.
Yes, do it. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's so important for us to come back to presence, and this is something that just is a resounding lesson in my life, particularly at the moment. It's just like that present awareness is like the missing element for so many people, and it extends beyond just meditating. It's like the meditation practices are a training for life. It's a training for how you're going to take that presence into every experience that you have. You don't just meditate for 20 minutes a day and then you get on with your life. Okay, cool, I'm in my head again. It's like you're strengthening a muscle that allows you the space to learn how to be present for every single thing that you're doing all day long. And that is the real reason of doing it. It's not just so I can check out and disconnect from the craziness of my life. Like, yeah, it's good for that. But the real reason you're meditating is to practice being present every day.
and also what you do when you notice that you're not present, and coming back to the
not
present
judging
moment.
yourself for it.
Yeah. A question that I like to ask my clients is, when was the last time you didn't have a problem bothering you?
That's a nice question.
Yeah, and for most people, it's they can't think of one. And the reason that I like to ask that question in the context of this conversation is when you have problems, you usually have a lack of presence.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the thinking mind and you're thinking about what's going on at work or with a partner or with your dating life or with a friend and what your goals and you're striving, and it's like you're not present.
Yeah.
And whereas for someone that is present a lot, you could probably name to me like a recent moment that you had of like mine. I mean, apart from this like entire conversation, because I feel so present with you, like I've had a lot of moments like that today, you know, like I go down, like I am a really, really strong advocate of no phone time. Like I have my phone off like 10 to 12 hours a day. And so I will start my day with my phone off and I go down to the beach and I'm
So
present
nice.
and I will sit in pleasure with my cup of coffee. This morning I journaled, I read my book, and I'm like present for that. And yeah, there's like moments where I have thoughts that come in and I might notice myself driving and I'll go into like default thinking, and it's just coming back to the present moment.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really about the muscle that you're learning to strengthen is not necessarily like being present's not a muscle. Being present's like a state, right?
Yes.
So if you think about like a bicep curl, you're in state A when your arm is fully stretched out, and you're in state B when you're at the top of that movement. It's the movement itself between A to B that you're strengthening with meditation. It's like being able to say, oh, I'm in state A, I need to get into state B right now. That's okay. It's fine. I just needed to move into a different state. And that muscle, the more that you flex it, the stronger it gets, the easier it is to move between those states without it being like a huge, like, oh my God, it's so heavy. How do I come out of the thinking mind?
Yeah.
You know, and like being able to just flex and be like, oh, cool. I'm back in the present. No big deal.
No shame, no
shame.
judgment. Yeah.
It's just, I just thought about some random shit because that's what my mind does naturally.
Yeah.
And cool, I'm just coexisting with my mind, and I have to always manage that, and that's fine. And your mind is a great tool when you don't allow it to be your master. You know, when you're the master of your mind, it's an amazing tool that allows you so much beauty and so many gifts and so much capacity to make an impact in the world. So I could talk to you for hours.
I know.
But I'm going to move on to my final question I always like to ask all of my guests, which is, you know, if you could have a formula for fulfillment and having a fulfilling life, what do you think that formula would be? And yeah, if you'd like to share it with the audience.
Yeah. For me, the formula is, for me and for anyone I think that's listening to this and trying to work out how to have a fulfilling life, it's working out what your specific core values are and living your life in accordance with them. Because when you are living in a life of alignment, you will just innately be fulfilled. And when you're not in alignment with those values, then you won't be. And I don't mean the values that society has subconsciously programmed you with, right? And if people are kind of don't really know where to start, it's usually starting to draw your attention in the moments where you feel really expanded and energized, right? So a lot of people, when I ask them this question, or people that I work with, one of the default responses is family. But then when I actually start peeling back the layers, they feel drained after they're with their family.
Yeah.
And so that's not to say that family isn't important to you, but it's not a core value that you need to live in alignment with in order to feel expanded and fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so for me, my number one is freedom, right? And you and I have had this conversation though, is then we get underneath like each value. What does that value specifically mean for you?
Yes.
Because freedom for me is freedom of choice.
Yeah.
It's freedom, like I can choose to do whatever I want in any given moment. So it's choice and it's time. Whereas it's not necessarily for me geographical, unless that, you know, eroded my choice to choose to move somewhere differently. It's not traveling the world. Like I like stability. You know, another one of my real core values is impact. So if I'm not in meaningful work that I feel like has an impact, I don't feel fulfilled.
Yeah, yeah.
Mine is fun. If I don't, like, genuinely, if I'm not having fun, I don't feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Like, life isn't all just, like, serious and heavy and, like, it is that, but it's also, like, it's lighthearted and it's pleasure and it's playful and it's, like, and I think this is part of the reason we've connected so much is, you know, I connect the most deeply with people that have that duality, right? Where we can have the deepest, like, most expansive conversations.
But also just laugh like idiots.
Yeah, we can just absolutely cack ourselves and, like, don't take ourselves too seriously and, like, drop some twerks in a gym class, you know? Like, so it's, and, you know, another one for me more recently, and, like, my values shift and change over time, and, like, their order of priority will change, but, like, one of my more recent ones has been health. And so lately, I haven't felt fully fulfilled or in alignment because my health hasn't been where I want it to be. And so it's the formula for me in feeling fulfilled and is working out what my values are, what order of priority they need to be in for that season of my life, and then living in alignment with them. And I think if anyone can actually go through that process, and it takes time, they will just innately feel more fulfilled. And if they don't know, actually starting to look at where do I feel energized and expanded. Like right now, I feel like high on life, right?
Me too.
And so if I was someone and I was like, okay, I don't really know what my core values are. I feel unfulfilled in life, but I'm really expanded by this, like a conversation I'm having with someone. I would go underneath it and kind of look at, okay, is it connection? Do you feel expanded because you've met a like-minded human? Is it personal growth? Are you expanded because of the substance of the conversations that you're having? Really starting to peel back the layers and just getting curious where you feel expanded and energized in life, and even writing them down if you need to, and then starting to look for common threads, and then actually working towards how can I live more in alignment with this? How can I create more of this? And being comfortable to be curious and comfortable to be in the discomfort when that also means shedding, right? Because if it is connection, but you're constantly surrounded by people that you feel drained by, you need to sit in the discomfort of hard conversations to change the dynamic of that relationship, or walking away from them. And then also the discomfort of loneliness until you meet other people. But if you are consistent, if you follow your curiosity, you follow the discomfort, and you work out what your core values are and you live your life in alignment with them, you will be fulfilled.
Yeah, I agree completely. Great formula.
Yeah,
that's like, you were thinking about it since last night, right?
Yeah. So Liv did pre-warn me, and that was to be fair, that was my intuitive response last night.
Yeah, it was. It was the same. It's just you thought about how you wanted to structure it more this afternoon. It was really nice. Yeah, beautifully said.
And it's also because when I feel a bit off in my life, or I'm not feeling fulfilled or in alignment, it's always my core values that I come back to, and it's either something is absent that I'm not, like right now, like because like my back's been a bit sore and stuff, like I'm not feeling really good because of my health. So it's either something has gone by the wayside or something needs a priority shift. So as I expand more in business, impact has massively come up. So in order for me to feel fulfilled, that probably has a priority more over other things.
Yeah, I completely understand, and I feel very similar in the place that I'm in my life right now. I think it's really interesting because when we speak about all of this, like the core values and how they deeply interlink, I think it's such a key element to finding fulfillment in life, to the point that they are kind of like your compass always, right? Like in my group of friends back in Thailand, we have a lot of conversation around authenticity. I think as a group, authenticity is probably one of the biggest values that we kind of collectively hold as being very important. But sometimes you can get into the element with authenticity, and it's not so much with this group, but just in general, I notice authenticity on its own can sometimes lead us to making choices that don't necessarily align with our core values of our higher self. Because let's say, for example, I don't know, I'm on a night out, and in this particular moment, I'm feeling on this night out that my authenticity is to go off with some guy that I've just met that I'm connecting with.
You notice sexual energy
and you feel
coming out, or like coming
and your body
up,
is
right?
intuitively telling you, oh my God, I want to go back with this person.
Yes.
But then what if one of your values is connection, community, and you have a friend who's with you who hasn't got anyone that she's met or whatever, and she's relying on you to give her a lift to go back home, and your trustworthiness, like reliability, maybe that's an important value for you. But in this moment, your authenticity is saying, go off with this guy because, you're connecting a lot and you really like him. And you want to just express right now, impulsively in this moment, what is the right thing. But then at that point, when you have a conflict between, your obligation to your friend and your desire and, authenticity to explore with this guy, for example, then in that moment, the only way that you can really make that decision is to check in with your values, I believe, to say, okay, well, right now I do really want to go back with this guy and it does feel right and he is amazing, cool, I'm glad I met him, but my value is that I'm a loyal person who's reliable and trustworthy, and that's who I really want to be working towards. And that's not always easy. It's not always easy to be reliable and trustworthy and to be a good friend, but it's what I want to be. And it's uncomfortable for me to sacrifice my selfish desire in this moment to be the person that I want to be. And I have to lean into the discomfort of not following this impulse to actually be the person that I want to be. And this is also breaking the pattern of being your old self as well. So in that moment, it's like, okay, you make that choice. And something I've been feeling into is then coming back into the body and not just being in the mind, is going through this evaluative process when I feel a bit torn on what should I do. Listening to my gut, okay, my gut wants me to do this, and then evaluating based on my values. Does this align with my values? Yes, okay, I'm going to do it. But then when I actually make the decision and I do that thing, how do I then feel in my body as well? Do I feel excited? Do I feel expanded, like you said? Do I feel like, wow, this feels amazing, almost high on life? Or do I then start to feel knots in my stomach? Because that means that I didn't actually listen to my intuition. I listened to my mind trying to convince me that it was my intuition, which is also coming into that, you know, deprogramming and starting to recognize the difference between thought and body. Because, you know, your mind is very clever, and a lot of the time you're going to make a choice from quote unquote intuition when it's actually your mind and your programming. Yeah, exactly.
I was actually thinking that as you were saying that. And, you know, a helpful question for someone in that moment when they're feeling an internal conflict is, you know, what would my highest self do?
Yes,
Because we can
yes.
often also see things as mutually exclusive that aren't. You could get that guy's number and then go spend time with your friend and then go back with him afterwards, right?
You could drop her off and then go back to meet him afterwards,
but
or
is
see him for coffee the next day.
Yeah, but is your mind in that moment, are you playing out a programming of like, I'm not good enough, so I want this person to choose me, a scarcity mindset of like, well, if I don't seize this opportunity and leave with him right now, then he might go home with someone else. I might not meet somebody else tonight. I might not meet somebody else ever. Like all of these kind of
Or it could
narratives.
be an avoidant pattern you're playing out because your friend is depending on you. So maybe you're trying to avoid helping your friend because you want to feel like absolved of any responsibility.
Yes.
There's so many programs that you think it's like, yeah, my body knows that this is the right thing, but that could be your trauma.
100%. And I think I'm glad you said that, because a lot of my journey has been really getting to a point with healing where I know that I'm not playing out trauma bonds by default.
Yeah.
Or unhealthy patterns by default. And I have such a strong relationship with my intuition now and how things feel in my body that I know when something is the right decision.
Yeah.
Or when it's actually, you know, insecurity, or it's one of those childhood wounds that are playing out instead.
It takes a long time to realign with your intuition, because from such a young age, each of us, man and woman, masculine and feminine, we've all been trained to disconnect from all intuitive feeling and to rely completely on the external to guide us on who we need to be, how we need to live, what we need to look like, how we need to speak, how we need to act. And, you know, that's coupled with, from a very young age, being shown that our needs are not going to be met by the external as well, but also that they should be met by the external. That's what we get taught. But inevitably, it's impossible because all of our needs need to be met by ourselves. And but we're being shown from the world around us that we should have everything given to us externally, but it's impossible. So it's just this, we're born with this dichotomy where we don't trust our intuition, we don't believe in ourselves, we don't trust ourselves, we're second guessing all the time, we're always looking externally to decide if we're worthy or not. And it takes a very long time to work back from that place and reverse engineer, and also at the same time feel and release the things that you need to release that you've been holding on to. It's a two-pronged approach, and it takes conscious effort and attention. It takes discomfort. It's not easy. That's why most people will just distract themselves and never do any of this work. Because it's easy. It's easy to just pretend like everything's fine. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, boys don't cry, I'm never going to be sad.
But deeply misery inducing.
It's not, you're not happy.
No, you're not. And this is the thing, it's like, it is uncomfortable. But I kind of like to see like some of the work as almost like a slingshot kind of analogy where right now, even if you're not fulfilled, you're unhappy, it's comfortable. And your brain is always going to seek familiarity and what's comfortable. The slingshot that you need to go through is the temporary heightened discomfort of breaking those patterns, whether that means like facing stuff that you've been bottling down, releasing trauma, all of that stuff, sitting in what might feel worse or harder, but that will ultimately propel you into a much, much, much more fulfilling and joy-filled life.
Exactly. And you feel amazing afterwards. Like, I can say hand on my heart that right now in my life, after doing all of this work, breaking free from those patterns, and there's still so much more I need to unpack, so much more I need to learn, but there's been a lot of work up until this point, and I feel very grateful for how I feel. Like, I am happy with myself and my life more than I've ever been. Like, I'm happy to be me. If I could be in a simulation and, you know, design myself an avatar, I would be me. Maybe minus a couple of health issues here and there, but like, I would be me. I wouldn't change and be like someone else or change anything about who I am or the way I feel or think or anything. I'm completely accepting of the fact that this is the life that I'm living, and I'm grateful for it. And I feel blessed every day. Like, I wake up, I live in paradise. I'm not rich. I don't have loads of money. I'm not like some super hyper successful like entrepreneur that's making millions every year. I'm just a normal person who's chosen to show myself that the patterns that I've built are not real, that the beliefs I had are not true, and I can just go out and live somewhere like Bali or Thailand for less money than I was living for back in the UK and have an amazing life. I wake up in paradise every day with amazing friends, beautiful beaches, a great lifestyle, the perfect balance of work and relaxation. And I'm not coming from a place of being rich or privileged. No one has helped me get here. I worked my arse off to get to this place. But anyone can do that. And I can put my hand on heart and say that having had a really unlucky start, a massive disadvantage in life, if I can do it, you can do it. Anyone can do it, right? And you know, it's the same for you. Like, you worked your ass off to get to a certain place, and you had everything that society says you should want, but you still realized that it wasn't right for you, and you had the courage to walk away from that and break the patterns and break the cycle. Like, and you're living this amazing life now. Like,
I say now, I had everything I wanted and nothing that I needed.
yeah, wow, yeah, so true,
Yeah.
right?
Because it's the part of our conditioning, all of the things that we've spoken about, but truly getting to what deeply, deeply feels good to you and lights you up. And, you know, so many people are just in this reluctant acceptance of being jaded,
Yes,
right?
yes.
They're in
bitter.
Yeah, they're in work that they're not passionate about, which they spend the vast majority of their days doing. They live for the weekend, where most of the time they're either trying to catch up on the energy and exhaustion from the week, or blow off steam, or like fit life into 2 days. And like, life is way too short to do that on rinse and repeat for multiple decades until you get to retirement and don't even have an able body to enjoy the life that you're then going to create.
And this is the sad thing, is like, there's such a common belief, particularly in the West, that like life will, like, I'll meet an old person in the UK, like my grandma's age or something, and I'll be really happy, like optimistic, excited by life, and they go, oh, don't worry, by the time you get to 40, life will beat that out of you. And it's like, there's such a narrative that like life is just sucky, and when you're young you're optimistic, as you get older, like, you start to realize how shit life is, and that doesn't have to be the reality for you. It doesn't have to be the way that you see your life. That narrative is absolutely bogus, and it's not true. I've met so many amazing people who are in their 70s and 80s living here in Bali, in Thailand, all over the world, and they are like so fulfilled and so grounded, and they look way younger than anyone at the same age, because they have such a low level of stress. So you don't have to live by this narrative that life is inevitably only going to be sucky and hard.
But if you do live by that narrative, it will be.
It will be, of course.
Because anytime you try and make a change, you will at some point, when it feels hard or uncomfortable, block yourself and stop, because you have this deep belief that it has to be sucky.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You're actually setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, completely. And that's why I think it's so important that we seek like some, you know, obviously self-love, self-acceptance, healing, but also at the same time fulfillment, because you can have a life that is fulfilling, and you can get to the end of a day working really hard on something, you know, grinding yourself away on a project for like a humanitarian thing, or maybe if your way of getting fulfillment is like making a revolutionary like fashion thing and like making these crazy clothes that make people really happy, or creating artwork which you think is going to speak to people about a particular issue that for you is really important or inspiring. It doesn't matter what fulfillment is to you. For every single person, it's unique and special. And like you said, your formula will help people find the answer to what that is for them. But when you're fulfilled, you can have a day that's not necessarily a happy day. You know, like, people chase happiness a lot, and happiness is a fleeting emotion. And it's not really a good thing to be chasing, because inevitably whenever you feel happy, you're going to be sad again. So you can have a day filled with like busyness and like stress and a lot of things going on and a lot to organize, but at the end of it you can be exhausted, hit your head on the pillow, and still feel fulfilled, knowing that what you did is bigger than you. Knowing that what you're doing, it's serving a purpose that's beyond yourself in some way, and it's connecting with something that for you is so much more meaningful than just being happy. So I think a life that's fulfilling is far more valuable than a life that's just happy. I don't think anyone will ever find a life where they're permanently happy unless they're taking copious amounts of drugs every day. But I wouldn't say that's real.
But even if you did, I think there would become a point where happiness didn't necessarily feel like happiness.
Yeah, diminishing returns, right? You need to have variety to be able to understand.
And the duality of like, sadness to appreciate the good times. But as you said, and you know, a question that I used to ask myself when I was kind of on this journey of working out what I wanted to do and what lit me up is, am I waking up excited about my life, and am I going to sleep feeling content? You know, and content being, you know, just an iteration of fulfillment, right? And as you said, like, you can have days where like you're tired, you're exhausted, you're annoyed, the power's not working, the AC is out, but like you can still go to bed and be like, do you know what, like, I got a message tonight from someone that like told me I'd literally changed their life in 90 minutes. Like, that is so deeply fulfilling.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're in a place in your life where you don't feel like that, are you really willing to live like that indefinitely? Are you really accepting that your life is just this reluctant resignation to all of the things that happen to you? That's so passive. It's so disempowering. Like, take action, right? Like,
Create your life.
Create your life. Don't wait. Create your life, you know? But
Yeah, beautiful. Beautifully said. I think that's the perfect place to end.
I think so too, yeah.
The podcast.
I felt that, yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much for the conversation. Thanks for coming on. I want you to come back.
Thank you for coming to my bedroom.
Yeah.
I want you to come back.
The bedroom is beautiful. I will come back. We'll come back to this bedroom next time I come to Bali, and we'll do episode 2.
Or maybe it'll be your bedroom
You
when
can
I'm
come
in
to
Thailand.
my bedroom in Thailand. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love you.
Oh,
Thank
I love you
you
too. Such a good chat. Such a great